Have you ever wondered what the earth beneath your feet looked like millions years ago? Right now, as you rest, the ground holds its own secrets, not metaphorical secrets, but actual physical memories compressed into beneath dirt. Somewhere beneath the concrete and the topsoil, beneath roots and bedrock, there are so many layers that remember when this world was so alien, so impossibly strange, that you would never, ever suffocate in its air within minutes. The ground remembers your and others' footsteps, massive footsteps. Footsteps that shook the earth like thunder, that compressed mud into patterns now turned to just stone and dust, that announced the passage of creatures so enormous their hearts had to pump blood upward through necks as long as city buses. Tonight, we're not just studying dinosaurs, we're not just examining bones or reading textbooks, we're doing something else entirely. We're going back, actually back, millions and millions years ago, to a time so distant that mountains have grown and eroded away since then, to a world where the very air tasted different, where gravity felt heavier than ever before on impossibly massive bodies, where the sun rose over landscapes that looked like fever dreams. We're going to walk through actually forests that haven't existed for 200 million years. We're going to breathe air that would literally poison us. We're going to stand in the presence of creatures that physics laws says that would be impossible. And yet they were. They lived. They hunted. They raised their young under stars we'll never see. The dinosaurs aren't gone. No, not entirely. They're sleeping under the stone, under the land beneath you, waiting in the dark layers of deep time. And tonight, for a few hours, we're going to wake them. The Triassic is calling, and the first giants are beginning to stir. The birth of strangeness. Late Triassic, 230 million years ago. The world is broken. That's the first thing you notice as the Triassic landscape materializes around you through the haze of deep time. This Earth is wounded, scarred, still recovering from something catastrophic, the Permian extinction. They'll call it millions of years from now. The Great Dying. The moment when 96% of all marine life and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates simply stopped existing. The ground beneath your feet is red, not the rich brown red of modern soil, but a harsh, oxidized, crimson, rusty desert sand that stretches to the horizon under a sun that seems too large, too bright, too merciless. The air shimmers with heat. The landscape is stark, spare. There are no flowers here. Flowers haven't been invented yet. The world is green and brown and red, painted in a limited palette that speaks of a planet still finding its way back from the edge of total annihilation. But life persists. Life always persists. In the distance, something moves. It's low to the ground at first. Your eyes struggle to distinguish it from the rocks and the scrub vegetation. But then it stands, rises on its hind legs, and you realize you're looking at something that's never been seen before in Earth's history. A dinosaur, not the giants. Not yet. Those are still millions of years away, waiting in the future like a promise. This is something smaller, more tentative, an experiment in a new kind of body plan, a new way of existing, Colophysis. One of the first. One of the originals. It's about the size of a large dog, but nothing like a dog. Nothing like anything that exists in your time. Its body is a study in efficiency, hollow bones to reduce weight, a long tail for balance, powerful hind legs built for speed. Its skin is not scales in the way you imagine them, not the overlapping plates of a reptile. It's something else, something in between. Small, pebbly scales on some parts of the body, but on others, around the neck, along the spine, there are structures that might be the ancestors of feathers, not true feathers, proto-feathers, thin filaments that catch the harsh Triassic light and shimmer with colors you don't have names for. Because color, in this world, is different. The Coelophysis stands motionless, and you can see it now, the iridescence, purples that shift to green depending on the angle of the sun. Oranges that pulse into deep red. Its throat inflates slightly, and a pattern appears there. Stripes, spots, something for display or threat or communication in a language that died 230 million years ago. It's watching something. Its head tilts with a quick, bird-like motion. Yes, bird-like, because birds don't exist yet, but they're already here in potential, encoded in this creature's bones and genes, waiting. The thing it's watching is another Coelophysis, smaller, younger. They circle each other in the red dust, and you can see the tension in their bodies. Predators assessing, calculating. The smaller one makes a sound, a hiss that starts low in its throat and rises into something that's almost a chirp, not a roar. These early dinosaurs don't roar. They don't have the vocal structures for it yet. Instead, they make sounds that are somehow more unsettling because they're so alien, so utterly removed from anything you associate with dinosaur. The confrontation ends without violence. The larger one makes a display, raises its arms slightly, opens its jaws to show rows of small, sharp teeth, and the smaller one backs away, retreats into the scrub vegetation that dots the landscape like punctuation marks in a sentence written across geological time. And now you notice the vegetation itself. The trees here are strange. Not trees in the way you understand them. These are conifers, yes, distant ancestors of modern pines, but they're wrong somehow. Their trunks are thick and squat, their branches spread in patterns that don't quite follow the rules of modern tree architecture, and between them, covering the ground in dense mats, are ferns. Endless ferns. Ferns that will dominate this landscape for the next 100 million years. But it's what grows among the ferns that's truly alien. Cycads. Plants that look like palms but aren't palms. Plants with thick, trunk-like stems and crowns of stiff, spiky leaves. They release pollen into the air. You can see it. Thick clouds of yellow that drift on the hot wind. The smell is overwhelming. Not unpleasant exactly, but intense, sharp, resinous. Mixed with the mineral tang of the red soil and something else. Something organic and slightly rotten. The smell of decay that's different because the things decaying are different. The light here is strange too. The sun is the same sun. It hasn't changed significantly in 230 million years. But the atmosphere is different. Less oxygen. More carbon dioxide. The way light refracts through this air creates colours that don't exist in your time. The shadows have a purple tinge. The highlights on leaves are almost silver. And when the wind picks up, and it does, suddenly, violently, the dust it carries catches the light in ways that make the whole landscape seem to shimmer, to become uncertain, as if the Triassic world is not entirely solid, not entirely real. The Silophysis moves again. It's hunting now. You can see the shift in its posture, the way its body becomes more focused, more intent. It's spotted something in the ferns. You can't see what, your eyes aren't adapted to this landscape the way its eyes are, and it begins to stalk. The movement is hypnotic, each step precise. Calculated. The tail held perfectly horizontal for balance. The arms, not quite wings, not quite hands, held close to the body. Its head remains absolutely still even as its body moves. A trick of biomechanics that won't appear again until birds evolve it tens of millions of years from now. Then it strikes. The attack is so fast you almost miss it. A burst of speed that shouldn't be possible for a creature without a four-chambered heart, without the high metabolism of a true endotherm. But it is possible. Evolution has found a way. The Celephysis's body is a compromise between cold-blooded efficiency and warm-blooded power. It can generate bursts of intense activity fueled by metabolic processes that are neither fully reptilian nor fully mammalian, but something in between. Its jaws snap shut on something, a small reptile, a rhynchosaur, squat and beaked and utterly doomed. The Celephys shakes its head once, violently, and you hear the small snap of breaking bones. The sound carries in the dry air, sharp and final, and then it feeds. There's no elegance in this, no grace, just necessity, teeth tearing, swallowing chunks whole. The Celephys doesn't chew. Its teeth aren't designed for that. They're designed to grip and tear and hold struggling prey. The eating is messy and quick and utterly pragmatic. When it's done, it stands motionless for a moment. Blood. And yes, it's red. The same red as your blood. Because hemoglobin is hemoglobin regardless of when you live, stains its snout. A thin membrane, a third eyelid that you barely noticed before, slides across its eye to clean it. The gesture is almost absurdly delicate after the violence of the kill. The day is ending. You can feel it in the quality of the light, in the way the heat is beginning to leach from the red sand. The Triassic night is coming, and it's different from any night you've known. As the sun touches the horizon, it's enormous. Bloated, red. It sets behind mountains that won't exist in your time, mountains that will erode away completely, that will be replaced by different mountains. that will rise and fall multiple times before humans evolve to wonder about them. The Coelophysis doesn't watch the sunset. It has no aesthetic appreciation for such things, but it does respond to the changing light, to the drop in temperature. It begins to move toward a cluster of rocks, an overhang that provides shelter, and as it settles into the space beneath the stone, as it tucks its head under its arm in a posture that's eerily bird-like, you realize something profound. This creature is warm. Not fully warm-blooded, not yet, but warmer than the cooling air around it. Its metabolism is generating heat, maintaining a body temperature that will allow it to be active when the sun returns, to hunt in the early morning before the cold-blooded reptiles have warmed enough to move. This is the innovation. This is the evolutionary advantage that will allow dinosaurs to dominate Earth for the next 165 million years. Not size, not yet. That comes later. But this ability to maintain activity across a wider range of temperatures, this metabolic middle ground that gives them access to resources and time periods that pure cold-blooded animals can't exploit. The stars are emerging now, and they're wrong. All wrong. The constellations you know don't exist. The North Star isn't where it should be, won't be where it should be for hundreds of millions of years, because Earth's axis wobbles, precesses, traces slow circles through the cosmos. The Milky Way stretches across the sky, but from a different angle, because the entire solar system is moving through the galaxy, orbiting the galactic center, and in 230 million years that orbit has carried us to a completely different position. Under these alien stars, the Triassic world settles into night. Sounds emerge that daylight suppressed. Something croaks in the distance. An amphibian, perhaps, one of the few survivors of the Great Dying. Something else makes a clicking sound, rhythmic and strange. Insects, maybe. Though insect is a category that includes so many alien forms in this time that the word becomes almost meaningless, and the Coelophysis sleeps, dreams perhaps. Do dinosaurs dream? Does the primitive brain in that narrow skull generate anything like the images and narratives that constitute dreams? Or is it sleep deeper, darker, more purely biological? We'll never know. That's one of the thousands of things we'll never know. The interior lives of these creatures are gone, completely, irretrievably. Lost in the same way their colours are lost, their sounds are lost, the exact texture of their skin is lost. But they were here. That's the miracle. That's the profound, almost unbearable fact. They were here, real as you are, living their lives with the same intensity and presence that you live yours, feeling the sun on their scales, tasting blood in their mouths, seeking mates and defending territories, and raising young and dying, always dying, generation after generation, for millions upon millions of years. And this is just the beginning. The Triassic is the prologue. The opening chapter, the foundation upon which something much larger, much stranger, much more impossible is about to be built. Because in the morning the Coelophysis will wake, will hunt again, will live its small, fierce life in the harsh Triassic landscape, and it won't know, can't know, that its descendants are coming. That the body planet represents, the innovations it carries in its genes, are about to explode into a radiation of forms that will fill every available niche, that will grow to sizes never before seen on land, that will dominate Earth more completely than any group of animals before or since. The age of giants is coming. The Jurassic is approaching. The world is about to become so strange, so unimaginably alien, that even this Triassic desert will seem familiar by comparison. But that's tomorrow. Millions of tomorrows. Tomorrows stacked on tomorrows until they become mountains of time. For now, under the wrong stars, in the wrong air, on the wounded Earth still healing from near total extinction, the first dinosaur sleeps, and dreams perhaps of a future it will never see but will help create. The ground remembers, the stone records, and somewhere in the deep layers, in the compressed time beneath your feet, this moment persists, this Triassic night, this sleeping predator, this world on the edge of transformation. Tomorrow everything changes. The giants are stirring in the genetic code and the possibilities encoded in bone and metabolism. The Jurassic dawn is breaking, and the Earth has never seen anything like what's coming next. Time has passed, not years, not centuries. 30 million years have evaporated like morning dew. The world has moved. Literally moved. Pangaea, that ancient supercontinent where all land was one, is fracturing, pulling apart. The Atlantic Ocean is being born in the rift, though it's just a narrow seaway now, a wound in the earth that will eventually become an ocean vast enough to swallow entire civilizations. And the air. The air is different. Breathe it in. Can you feel the difference? There's more oxygen now. Not as much as in your time, but more than the Triassic. Enough to support something that shouldn't be possible. Something that violates every principle of engineering and physics you know. Something massive beyond comprehension. The landscape that materializes around you is greener than before. Lusher. The Triassic's harsh reds and browns have given way to a world drowning in vegetation. Ferns still dominate. They're everywhere, forming understories beneath towering conifers that have grown larger, more complex, more successful in the millions of years since the Coelophysis walked. But it's the sound that hits you first. A low rumble, so low it's almost subsonic. You feel it in your chest before you hear it. A vibration that comes from everywhere and nowhere that seems to emanate from the earth itself. And then it comes again. Regular, rhythmic, like thunder but deliberate, like drums but organic. Footsteps. Something is walking through this Jurassic forest. Something so large that each step sends shockwaves through the ground, that announces its presence from kilometers away, that makes the very air tremble with its passage. The trees in front of you, conifers taller than redwoods, their trunks thick as houses, begin to sway. Not from wind. There is no wind. They're being pushed, being moved aside. Something is coming through them the way you might push through tall grass, and then you see it. The head emerges first. It's small, absurdly small considering what follows, at the end of a neck that keeps coming and coming and coming. Rising up, impossibly up, until it reaches nearly 15 meters into the air. The neck is longer than a city bus. It moves with a sinuous grace that seems to defy the laws of physics, that makes you wonder how blood could possibly be pumped that high, how the brain at the end could receive oxygen, how structural engineering could allow something this impossible. Brachiosaurus. Though even the name feels inadequate. Names are human constructs. This thing predates human language by 200 million years. It exists outside of language, outside of taxonomy, in a realm of pure physical presence. The body follows. And oh, the body. It's the size of a building. The torso alone could contain your entire apartment. 4 legs, each one thicker than ancient columns, each ending in feet that look almost delicate considering what they're supporting. The legs are positioned directly under the body, vertical, bearing weight in the most efficient way possible. Because they have to, because this creature weighs somewhere between 50 and 70 tons. More than 10 African elephants, more than any land animal in your time, more than seems physically possible. The skin is not what you expect. It's not lizard-like, not scaly in the way movie dinosaurs are scaly. It's thick, yes, like elephant skin, but different. There are scales, but they're small, almost pebbly, and in some places they form patterns, rosettes, arrangements that might be for thermoregulation or display or purposes we can only guess at. The colour is extraordinary. A base of deep grey, yes, but not uniform. There are patches of darker pigmentation along the spine, the neck, and in the right light, the early Jurassic light slanting through the canopy, you can see subtle patterns. Stripes, perhaps, or dappling, like sunlight through leaves, evolved as camouflage despite the creature's enormous size. Because young brachiosaurs need to hide. Young ones are vulnerable, so evolution paints them in patterns that work when they're small, patterns that persist into adulthood even though nothing could possibly hunt something this size. The Brachiosaurus pauses. Its neck extends higher. How is it going higher? Where is the blood pressure coming from? How does the heart manage this? The answer is in the heart itself, not one heart, but a cardiac system that's a marvel of biological engineering. A 4-chambered heart, yes, but massive, powerful, generating pressures that would kill a human instantly. And the neck, the impossibly long neck, isn't just a simple tube. It contains valves, specialized blood vessels, mechanisms for preventing backflow when the animal lowers its head to drink. The whole system is a hydraulic miracle that took millions of years to perfect. At the top of that neck, the head is small, narrow. The mouth is filled with peg-like teeth, not for chewing, because brachiosaurs don't chew. The teeth are for stripping leaves from branches, for raking vegetation into the mouth where it will be swallowed whole, processed in a digestive system that's more fermentation chamber than stomach. The eyes are large, set on the sides of the head for maximum field of view. They're dark, liquid. Intelligent in a way that's hard to define because intelligence here means something different than in your time. The Brachiosaurus reaches for a branch. The movement is slow, deliberate, almost meditative. The neck curves, and watching it curve is mesmerizing because you can see the individual vertebrae working, the muscles and tendons operating in concert to control this impossible structure. The mouth closes around a cluster of cones, conifer seeds rich in nutrients, and strips them from the branch with a motion that's practiced, efficient, done millions of times over a life that might span 100 years. And then it breathes. The sound is like wind through a cave, deep, resonant. The nostrils are positioned high on the head, an adaptation that allows the animal to breathe even when its head is up in the canopy, even when it's reaching for the highest vegetation. Each breath moves air through a respiratory system that's unlike anything in your world, not mammalian lungs. Dinosaurs have air sacs, extensions of the lungs that run throughout the body, even into some of the bones, making them lighter, making the impossible possible. Each breath is more efficient than yours. Each inhalation extracts more oxygen. It's one of the innovations that allows these creatures to reach sizes that mammals never could. Behind this giant, you notice others. A small herd, 5 or 6 individuals, ranging in size from a juvenile maybe 5 meters tall to another adult nearly as massive as the first. They move together slowly, destroying and creating the forest simultaneously. Where they walk, trees are pushed down, crushed, trampled. But in their wake, the cleared areas will let in light, will allow new growth, will create ecological niches that smaller creatures will exploit. They're ecosystem engineers, these giants, shaping the world through their mere existence. The light here is golden. That's the only word for it. The sun is filtering through layers of canopy, the high conifers, the mid-level tree ferns that are trying to become trees, the lower ferns and cycads that form the understory. Each layer filters the light differently, creating a cathedral effect. Beams of illumination that angle down through the green like something sacred, like something too beautiful to be real but undeniably present. And everywhere there's moisture. The Jurassic is humid, wet. You can feel it in the air, thick and heavy, making each breath feel substantial, making the temperature seem higher than it is. There are no deserts here, not like the Triassic. The breakup of Pangaea has changed the climate patterns. Ocean currents flow differently. Weather systems operate in new configurations. The result is a world that's uniformly green, uniformly lush. A greenhouse planet where the poles are temperate and the equator is a steam bath of vegetation. A sound makes the Brachiosaurus pause. Its head swings, slowly, because everything is slow at this scale, toward the source. And you hear it too. A different kind of rumble. Deeper. More aggressive. A vocalization that's half roar, half bellow. Something that uses frequencies your ears weren't designed to fully perceive, but which your entire body can feel. Something else is here. Something that makes even these giants nervous. Through the ferns as tall as your house with fronds the size of your body, another shape appears. Lower to the ground than the brachiosaurs. More compact, but radiating danger in a way that's unmistakable even across 200 million years of evolution. Allosaurus, not fully grown, not yet, but still formidable. Still a predator that commands respect. It's perhaps 7 meters long from nose to tail. The body is streamlined. Everything about it speaks of motion, of pursuit, of violence channeled through meat and bone. The hind legs are powerful, muscular, built for bursts of speed that would be terrifying if you were the one being chased. The arms are small, smaller than the brachiosaur's arms relative to body size, but not vestigial, not useless. Each arm ends in 3-fingered hands tipped with curved claws, weapons for gripping, for holding struggling prey while the real killing tools do their work. The head. Look at the head. It's massive, disproportionately large. The skull is built around the jaws, around the mouth, around the teeth that are the whole point of the animal's existence. The teeth are not all the same size. Some are longer, some shorter, some curved slightly inward, each one positioned for a specific purpose in the sequence of biting, tearing, disabling. They're serrated, both edges, like steak knives but made of bone, continuously replaced throughout the animal's life. Lose one tooth, another grows in behind it. The mouth is a self-sharpening weapon system that's been perfected over millions of years of evolution. The skin is different from the brachiosaurs, tougher, more reptilian. And the colours are what shock you. Stripes, bold stripes running laterally along the body. Black and deep red or maybe dark blue, it's hard to tell in this light. And besides, the Allosaurus has pigments in its skin that respond to wavelengths you can't see, patterns that exist in ultraviolet, displays meant for other Allosaurus eyes that can perceive things yours cannot. The pattern isn't just for beauty, it's functional. The stripes break up the animal's outline, make it harder to spot in the dappled forest light, allow it to approach closer before prey realizes the danger. Camouflage for something that weighs 2 tons. Evolution's brutal pragmatism. The Allosaurus is watching the brachiosaurs, calculating. Its eyes forward-facing, giving it the binocular vision it needs to judge distances, to time attacks, track the juvenile brachiosaurus at the edge of the herd. The young one is only 5 meters tall, only 5 tons, still massive by any reasonable standard, but compared to the adults, it's vulnerable, potentially within reach. But the math doesn't work, not today. The adults are too close, too aware. One of them, the largest female, has positioned herself between the Allosaurus and the juvenile. She lowers her head slightly, a gesture that brings several tons of neck and skull into play as a potential weapon. The message is clear even across species boundaries. Not worth it. Find easier prey. The Allosaurus stands motionless for a long moment. You can almost see the calculation happening behind those eyes. Predators don't waste energy on futile hunts. Energy is precious. Every calorie matters. An injury from attacking something too large could mean starvation, could mean death. It turns, slowly, with a dignity that seems almost deliberate, and melts back into the ferns. The brachiosaurs resume feeding. The tension dissipates. Life continues because life always continues, relentless and patient and utterly indifferent to drama. You notice other things now that the immediate danger has passed. The forest is full of life. A small pterosaur glides overhead, not a dinosaur but a flying reptile, distant cousin to the terrible lizards, master of an aerial realm that dinosaurs themselves will only enter through the evolution of birds. Its wingspan is perhaps 2 meters. Its body is fuzzy with primitive feathers, or proto-feathers, or something in between. It calls out, a sharp, carrying cry that sounds almost like a gull but with harmonics that are all wrong, that remind you this is an alien world wearing familiar masks. Something scurries up a tree trunk. A small dinosaur, maybe, or a mammal. Yes, mammals exist here, have existed all along through the Triassic and into the Jurassic, but they're small, marginal, nocturnal creatures waiting in the shadows for their moment. That moment won't come for another 135 million years. For now, they're bit players in a drama dominated by scales and talons. The vegetation itself is breathing. You can see it if you watch closely enough. The ferns curl and uncurl their fronds in response to the moving patches of sunlight. The cycads release pollen in great clouds when the wind picks up, painting the air yellow gold, making you want to sneeze from the sheer biological excess of it. And everywhere there's the sound of water, dripping from leaves, running in streams, pooling in the depressions left by brachiosaurus footprints that will become micro-ecosystems all their own. A footprint. Look at one closely. It's enormous, nearly 1 meter across. Circular, with 3 distinct toe impressions, and a heel print that sunk deep into the mud. This will fossilize. Millions of years from now, paleontologists will find this exact print preserved in stone, and they'll measure it, study it, write papers about it. This moment, this Jurassic morning, will reach across the geological ages to touch the future, to tell humans who haven't yet evolved that giants walked here. The brachiosaurus that made that print is moving on now. The herd is migrating. Not far, maybe only a few kilometers, but constantly moving because they have to. Because consuming enough vegetation to fuel a 70-ton body means you can never stay in one place long. They're not destroying the forest, they're maintaining it, creating clearings, spreading seeds through their droppings, shaping the landscape through their existence in ways that will persist long after they're gone. Watch them go, watch how the forest absorbs them, these creatures that seem too large to hide, but which disappear into the green with surprising ease. The last you see is a tail, that long whip-like tail that serves as counterbalance, as communication device, as weapon in its own right if a predator gets too close to the hind end. The sound of their footsteps fades, the ground stops trembling, the forest settles back into its baseline of sound, insects buzzing, pterosaurs calling, something croaking in the distance. There might be an amphibian or might be something else entirely, some creature that exists only in the Jurassic and will leave no descendants, no trace except perhaps a fossil that no one will ever find. The light is changing. Afternoon is approaching, though time feels different here. Longer. Each moment stretched thin by the sheer strangeness of existence in this place. You could spend lifetimes in this forest and never see everything, never catalogue every species, never understand all the relationships, all the dependencies, all the intricate ecological connections that make this world function. But evening is coming. The Jurassic night approaches. And night in this time, in this place, is when other things emerge. Things that have been sleeping through the heat of the day. Things that hunt in darkness. The quality of the light shifts from gold to amber to something deeper. The shadows grow longer, merge, begin to pool between the trees like spilled ink. The temperature drops. Not much, because the Jurassic is warm even at night, but enough to notice. Enough to make the cold-blooded creatures seek shelter, seek the stored heat in rocks and tree trunks. But the dinosaurs remain active. That's their advantage. That's the innovation that lets them dominate. They maintain their body temperature, generate heat internally, can hunt or feed or migrate regardless of whether the sun is up. Somewhere in the growing darkness an Allosaurus is waiting, watching, patient. Somewhere else a Brachiosaurus is settling down to sleep, folding those impossible legs, lowering that impossible neck, becoming a living hill in the landscape, and all around, the Jurassic breathes, lives, continues its ancient rhythms that have nothing to do with you, that would continue exactly the same whether you observe them or not. This is what extinction means. Not just that these creatures died, but that these moments, these specific, particular moments of being alive in the Jurassic, are gone forever. No one will ever see this exact sunset through these exact trees with these exact animals in these exact positions. It happened once, only once. And then time moved on, as time always does, indifferent and unstoppable. But in the stone, in the compressed layers beneath your feet, the memory persists. The fossils wait, the prints endure. And sometimes, if you know where to look, you can still see them. Traces of a morning 200 million years ago when giants walked through forests that no longer exist under a sun that still shines. The Jurassic will continue for another 50 million years. The giants will grow even larger. The predators will grow more refined. The world will become stranger still. But that's tomorrow. Many tomorrows. For now, as darkness falls on this Jurassic landscape, as the last light fades and the stars emerge, different stars, wrong constellations, but beautiful nonetheless, the ground remembers what it held, the weight of giants, the passage of time. The moment when Earth was young and strange and ruled by creatures that physics said shouldn't exist, and yet they did. For 165 million years they did. The forest is silent now, waiting, holding its breath, because in the darkness in the Jurassic night, something else is stirring. Something that will change everything we think we know about these ancient worlds. But that revelation waits in the next chapter, in the next layer of time, in the next fossilized moment. For now, the giants sleep, and the world dreams of tomorrow. The forest has opened up, not disappeared. The Jurassic is still a green world, still lush with vegetation, but changed, transformed. Where dense canopies once dominated, there are now clearances. Vast stretches where ferns spread like an ocean, waist-high and rustling in the wind, creating a sound like whispered secrets, like the earth itself is murmuring in a language older than words. This is the fern prairie, a uniquely Jurassic landscape. Imagine the grasslands of Africa, but grass hasn't evolved yet, won't evolve for another 100 million years. So instead, there are ferns. Millions of them, billions of them, stretching to the horizon in waves of green that ripple when the wind passes through, creating patterns like water, like something fluid even though it's rooted in earth. The light here is different than in the forest, harsher, more direct. The sun beats down without the mercy of canopy, and you can feel the heat rising from the ground in shimmering waves. But it's not desert heat. The air is still humid, still thick with moisture. It's more like a greenhouse, a terrarium the size of a continent. And in this openness, this exposed landscape where hiding is difficult and sightlines extend for kilometers, this is where the real hunters live. The sound comes first, a roar, but that word is inadequate. This is something deeper than roar. It starts as a rumble in the subsonic range. You feel it in your bones before you hear it. Then it rises, climbs through frequencies that make your teeth ache, that resonate in your skull, that seem designed specifically to trigger every prey animal's panic response. It's not just sound, it's a weapon. An announcement, a declaration that the apex predator has arrived. The ferns in front of you explode outward as something crashes through them. Allosaurus. Fully grown this time, nothing like the juvenile we saw before. It's enormous, nearly 9 meters from nose to tail tip, perhaps 2.5 tons of muscle and bone and killing machinery. But it's not bulky, not clumsy. Everything about it speaks of refined violence, of millions of years of evolution perfecting the art of pursuit and destruction. The body is balanced perfectly over the hips. The tail, massive, muscular, extends behind as a counterweight, allowing the animal to make sharp turns at speed without toppling over. The hind legs are pure power, each muscle visible beneath the skin when it moves, each tendon like cable, each foot ending in 3 toes tipped with sickle claws that grip the earth with each step. The arms seem small. They always seem small on these large theropods. But watch them. Watch how they move independently, how the 3-fingered hands flex and grip at nothing, practicing the motion of holding struggling prey. Each finger ends in a curved claw perhaps 20 centimeters long. Not for killing, the jaws do that, but for gripping, for anchoring the predator to its victim while the real weapon does its work. And the head. God, the head, it's over 1 meter long. The skull is mostly massive hinges of bone built around the simple purpose of opening wide and closing hard. The teeth are visible even when the mouth is closed, too large to be fully contained, sticking out in an irregular line that makes the animal look like it's perpetually snarling. Each tooth is curved slightly backward, serrated on both edges like a steak knife, designed not just to puncture but to saw, to cut through hide and muscle and bone. The eyes are amber. You can see that in the right light. Large, forward-facing, intelligent. When this animal looks at you, there's something there. Not human intelligence, that's the wrong framework entirely, but calculation. Assessment, the kind of intelligence that solves problems. How do I get past those horns? What angle of attack minimizes my injury? Is this prey worth the energy expenditure? The skin is covered in small, pebbly scales. But there's something else. Along the spine, down the neck, there are structures that aren't quite scales. Proto-feathers, short, bristle-like. They give the animal a slight ridge, a mohawk of primitive plumage that might be for display, for temperature regulation, for purposes we can only guess at. The color is striking, deep russet brown with those bold lateral stripes we saw before, but now you can see they change. Shift. Darken when the animal is agitated, lighten in bright sun. Active camouflage, chromatophores in the skin responding to environment and emotion. This Allosaurus is hunting. You can see it in the posture, the way the head is held low, level with the spine, the way the eyes scan the fern prairie, processing movement, looking for the telltale signs of prey, and then it sees something. The body goes still, perfectly still. The only movement is the slight rise and fall of the ribs as it breathes. What it's watching emerges from the ferns 100 meters away. Stegosaurus, an animal so strange that when its fossils were first discovered, scientists assembled them backward, putting the tail plates on the head because surely nothing that bizarre could be correct. But it is correct. The Stegosaurus is real. 17 plates of bone rising from its spine in 2 alternating rows, each plate thin and tall. covered in skin that's rich with blood vessels. The plates catch the light as the animal moves, and you can see they're not uniform grey or brown. They're flushed, coloured, pink and orange and red, the blood showing through the thin bone, creating a display that might be for thermoregulation, catching sun to warm the blood, radiating heat to cool down, or might be for display for making the animal look larger, more threatening, more impressive to potential mates. The body is massive but low to the ground. The hind legs are much longer than the front legs, giving the whole animal a hunched forward-leaning posture. The head is tiny, absurdly tiny. The brain might weigh 80 grams, less than a kitten's, in a body that weighs 4 tons. But intelligence isn't everything. The Stegosaurus has survived for millions of years with that tiny brain, which means it's smart enough. Smart enough to find food, smart enough to find mates, smart enough to avoid most predators. The tail is the key. The weapon. It's thick at the base, narrowing to a point, and at the end, the very end, there are 4 spikes, each one perhaps 60 centimeters long, sharp, made of bone, designed to swing like a medieval flail, to drive those points into the flesh of anything that gets too close to the rear quarters. The Stegosaurus is aware of the Allosaurus. How could it not be? The predator's scent is on the wind. But it doesn't run. Running isn't an option. Stegosaurs aren't built for speed. Instead, it does something else. It turns, slowly, deliberately, presenting its side, showing the plates, making itself look larger, more formidable. The tail is positioned between its body and the Allosaurus. Ready? The spikes catch the light, gleaming. The Allosaurus circles, patient. In no hurry. This is a game it's played before, a dance with rules written in scars and broken bones and narrow escapes. The Stegosaurus tracks its movement, always keeping those tail spikes between them. The plates along its back are flushed bright red now, a threat display, or maybe just elevated heart rate pushing more blood through the thermoregulatory system. Either way, the message is clear. I am not easy prey. But the Allosaurus is persistent. It feints left, and the Stegosaurus shifts its weight, the tail swinging slightly in anticipation. Too slow. The Allosaurus could exploit that lag time if it wanted. But something makes it hesitate. Experience, perhaps. The memory of another Stegosaurus, another hunt, and the pain of having one of those tail spikes penetrate its thigh. The weeks of limping, the vulnerability while injured. The calculation changes. This Stegosaurus is healthy, alert, positioned well. The tail is too much of a risk. Better to wait, to follow at a distance, to watch for weakness, injury, exhaustion, anything that shifts the odds. The standoff breaks. The Allosaurus turns away, not in retreat but in patient dismissal. It will find easier prey. Something younger, something slower. Something that doesn't have 4 bone spikes attached to a multi-ton battering ram. The Stegosaurus watches it go. The plates gradually fade from bright red back to a duller colour. The tension leaves its posture. But it doesn't relax completely. Can't relax completely. Not in a world where being prey is a full-time occupation, where vigilance is the difference between seeing another sunrise and becoming calories for something with teeth. The fern prairie stretches in all directions. And now that your eyes have adjusted to this landscape, you can see there are others, many others. A small herd of Camptosaurus, smaller herbivores, perhaps 5 meters long, walking on 2 legs when they need to move quickly, but often dropping to all 4s to feed. They're more agile than the Stegosaurus, built for escape rather than defense. You can see it in their bodies. Lighter bones, longer legs, eyes positioned for maximum field of view. Prey animals, through and through. Something else is moving through the ferns at the edge of your vision, lower to the ground. You catch a glimpse of scales, of a tail, of something that might be a small predator, or might be something else entirely. The Jurassic is full of species we'll never find fossils of, creatures that lived and died without leaving any trace, their stories lost in the gaps between discoveries. The sun is high now, brutal. The heat makes the air shimmer, makes distances uncertain. The Allosaurus has found shade, a cluster of low conifers at the prairie's edge, and is resting. Not sleeping, but conserving energy. The jaws hang slightly open, and you can see the tongue, thick, muscular, probably used to manipulate food, to feel texture and temperature. The breathing is slower now, calmer. The hunt can wait. The heat demands rest. This is something people don't think about. The mundane reality of being a dinosaur. The hours and hours of simply existing, of resting in shade, of digesting food, of maintaining a massive body in a world without the conveniences of modern ecosystems. No scavengers to clean up kills quickly. They have to guard carcasses for days. No fast-growing grass to provide easy calories. Just ferns and conifers and cycads that require constant feeding. No hospitals if they get injured. Just survival or death. Binary and absolute. The Stegosaurus has moved on, seeking better feeding grounds. Its path through the ferns is visible from above, a trail of trampled vegetation, of disturbed earth, of browse marks on the taller plants where it reached up to strip leaves. Everything leaves traces. Everything marks its passage. And these marks will fade, erased by growth and weather and time, unless something happens to preserve them. Unless mud becomes stone. Unless chance and chemistry conspire to make fossils. The light is changing. Afternoon now. The shadows are lengthening, reaching across the fern prairie like dark fingers. And with the changing light comes activity. The heat of midday has passed its peak. The animals that were resting are beginning to stir. A sound makes you turn. Different from the Allosaurus roar. Deeper. Resonant. You can feel it in your chest, in your bones, in the air itself which seems to vibrate with the sound. Something large is approaching. Very large. You can't see it yet. It's beyond the small rise in the terrain, hidden by the swell of ancient earth. But you can hear it. The footsteps. The breathing. The sound of vegetation being consumed in massive quantities. The Allosaurus hears it too. Its head lifts. The eyes focus in that direction. But there's no hunting posture this time. No stalking preparation. Instead, something else. Caution. Respect. Because what's coming is beyond even an Allosaurus's ability to hunt. The head appears first, cresting the rise. Then the neck, impossibly long, even longer than the Brachiosaurus we saw before. And then the body, and more body. It keeps coming, keeps revealing itself, until you realize you're looking at something that shouldn't exist, that can't exist, that violates every principle of scaling and biomechanics. Diplodocus, 25 meters long, perhaps 15 tons, though tons is an abstraction. Stand next to it. Feel the ground shake with each step. Watch the tail, that impossibly long tail, trailing behind like a whip made of vertebrae and tendon, and you understand that measurements mean nothing. This is presence. This is mass. This is biological architecture, on a scale that makes no sense. The neck alone is perhaps 8 meters long. 40 vertebrae, each one hollowed out to reduce weight, each one connected by ligaments that are as thick as your arm, each one supporting muscles that have to hold this structure horizontal when the animal is moving, have to lift it when the animal is drinking. And the animal is drinking now. There's a stream cutting through the fern prairie. You hadn't noticed it before, but the Diplodocus has. Its head lowers slowly, gracefully, until the narrow muzzle reaches the water. The teeth are strange, peg-like, positioned only at the front of the mouth, designed for stripping leaves from branches, not for chewing. The Diplodocus doesn't chew. Nothing this large has time to chew. It strips, swallows, lets the digestive system do the work. The drinking is surprisingly delicate. Small sips. The neck rises, allowing gravity to move water down toward the body. Then lowers again for more. The process takes minutes. Everything at this scale takes longer. Digestion can take days. Growth takes decades. A full life might span a century or more, though few animals live that long. Injury, disease, predation, mortality is constant even for giants. The Allosaurus watches from the shade, makes no move. Even together, a pack of Allosaurus might bring down a Diplodocus, but it would be risky, dangerous, and this individual looks healthy. The skin is tight, well hydrated, the eyes are clear. The movement is fluid, no signs of age or weakness, not worth the risk. The Diplodocus finishes drinking. The head rises, up and up, higher than the tallest trees at the prairie's edge, high enough that you have to crane your neck to follow it. And for a moment it just stands there, neck extended, surveying the landscape. What does it see from that height? What does the world look like from 8 meters up? Can it see for kilometers? Can it spot predators long before they're a threat? Can it see other diplodocus in the distance? Can it recognize individuals? Can it communicate across vast spaces with low-frequency calls that travel through ground and air? We don't know. We'll never know. It's one of the thousands of lost details, gone forever with the animals themselves. The diplodocus moves on. Its path will take it across the prairie, toward another cluster of conifers in the distance. The footsteps are regular, rhythmic, like a slow heartbeat, like the pulse of the earth itself. With each step, the ground compresses. Mud that will in some places become stone, footprints that will survive for 170 million years, becoming ignites, trace fossils, evidence that something this impossible actually existed. The afternoon continues. The fern prairie lives its life indifferent to observation. A small pterosaur swoops low, snatching something from the ferns. An insect, maybe, or a small vertebrate. Something croaks in the stream, a sound that's simultaneously familiar and alien. The wind picks up, creating waves in the ferns, making the whole prairie seem to breathe. And everywhere there's the undercurrent of violence. Not constant violence, not dramatic violence, but the potential for it. The Allosaurus resting in shade is violence waiting. The Stegosaurus is defense waiting. The Camptosaurus herd is vigilance waiting. Every animal here is part of an equation of survival, of calories and energy and risk assessment, of predator and prey, engaged in an arms race that's been running for millions of years and will continue for millions more. This is the truth of the Jurassic, not constant drama, not endless battles, but the background hum of survival, the daily calculation of how to get enough food without becoming food, the balance of risk and reward that every animal navigates every moment of every day. The sun is lowering, evening approaches, the light turns gold, then amber, then something deeper. The temperature drops slightly, only slightly, because the Jurassic night is warm, but enough to notice, enough to trigger responses in the animals. The Camptosaurus herd moves toward the tree line, seeking shelter for the night. The Stegosaurus settles into a defensive posture near a cluster of cycads, tail positioned to protect against nocturnal threats, and the Allosaurus stands, defect. The hunting posture returns because night is when the real hunting begins. When prey animals are less vigilant, when darkness provides cover, when the predator's superior senses, smell, hearing, the ability to detect vibrations through the ground, give it advantage. The fern prairie at twilight is hauntingly beautiful. The last light catches the edges of the ferns, turning them silver. The first stars are appearing. Wrong stars, alien constellations, but beautiful nonetheless. The air smells of vegetation, and earth, and water, and something else, something organic and ancient, that has no equivalent in your time. This moment is everything. This is what extinction steals. Not just the animals, but the moments, the specific particular moments of being alive in a specific place at a specific time. This twilight, this prairie, this Allosaurus beginning to hunt under these stars, only once. And then it was gone. But in the stone, the memory persists. In the fossils, the shapes remain. In the footprints, the passage endures. And sometimes, if you know how to look, you can still see them. Traces of an evening 170 million years ago when hunters moved through fern prairies that no longer exist, when prey animals huddled in darkness that has long since passed, when the Jurassic lived and breathed and continued its ancient rhythms. The Allosaurus disappears into the growing darkness. The hunt begins. And somewhere in the night, something will die so that something else can live. That's the equation. That's the truth, brutal and beautiful, and utterly indifferent to sentiment. The ferns whisper in the night wind. The stream continues its ancient song. And the Jurassic waits, patient and eternal, holding its secrets in layers of stone and time. Tomorrow will bring new hunts, new deaths, new births. The cycle continues because it must, because life is relentless, because evolution never stops optimizing, never stops searching for new solutions to old problems. But tonight, in this moment, everything is balanced. Predator and prey, violence and peace. Life and death dancing together under stars that will burn for billions of years after these creatures are gone, after their bones have turned to stone, after the very continents have rearranged themselves and the world has become something utterly different. The fern prairie dreams. And in that dream, hunters walk and prey run, and life continues its beautiful, terrible persistence. The Jurassic endures. For now. For a little while longer. But change is coming. Always change is coming. The oceans hold secrets, depths we haven't explored, creatures we haven't met. And beneath the waves, in the alien water of ancient seas, something else is waiting. Something that will show us that the land doesn't have a monopoly on monsters. The land fades behind you, the fern prairies, the towering sauropods, the hunting Allosaurus. All of it recedes, becomes memory, becomes shoreline, because we're walking now toward something else, toward the edge, toward the place where earth meets water, where one world gives way to another. The beach is not like beaches in your time. The sand is coarser, darker, made from different rocks ground down by different processes. There are no seashells scattered in the familiar way. Shells exist, but different shapes, different spirals, different architectures of calcium carbonate that speak of alien oceans. The smell is intense. Salt, yes, but also something organic, something rotting and growing simultaneously. Seaweed that isn't quite seaweed. Algae that form mats along the tide line. The detritus of a marine ecosystem that has no modern equivalent. The water stretches to the horizon. The Tethys Sea. The great ocean that once separated northern and southern land masses. It's warm. Warmer than any ocean in your time. The whole planet is warmer. No ice caps, no cold currents flowing from frozen poles. Just tropical and subtropical waters teeming with life, holding heat like a vast reservoir, driving weather patterns that make the Jurassic simultaneously lush and violent. The waves roll in with a rhythm that's been unchanged for billions of years. That at least is familiar. The physics of water haven't changed. Gravity still pulls. The moon still creates tides, though the moon is closer now, fractionally, and the tides are slightly stronger, the days slightly shorter. The Earth spins faster. A Jurassic day is perhaps 23 hours. You wouldn't notice consciously, but your body would feel it. Your circadian rhythms would struggle to adjust. You're standing at the waterline. Waves wash over your feet, except you have no feet here. You're just consciousness observing across the gulf of time. But if you did, you'd feel the warmth. The water is perhaps 30 degrees Celsius. Bath water, blood temperature, the ocean as womb. And beneath the surface, everything changes. Wade in. Go deeper. The water rises to your waist, your chest, your neck. The bottom drops away. You're floating now in the open water. And below you is darkness. Depth. The continental shelf giving way to the abyss. And in that darkness, something is moving. Something enormous. The water pressure changes first. You feel it as displacement, as the sense of something massive passing nearby, pushing water ahead of it, creating currents that tug at you. And then you see it, a shape, moving through the blue-green murk with terrifying speed. Leopleurodon. Though the name is inadequate, how do you name something that seems like it shouldn't exist? How do you classify a nightmare that swims? It's perhaps 7 meters long, maybe more. The water distorts, makes certainty impossible. But what's clear is the power, the sheer predatory perfection. This is what happens when evolution takes millions of years to optimize a killing machine for the open ocean. This is apex made flesh and fin. The body is streamlined, hydrodynamic. Every curve, every contour, designed to move through water with minimum resistance. The skin is smooth, not scaly like the land dinosaurs. Smooth like a dolphin, like a whale, though this is neither. This is a marine reptile, a plesiosaur, something that breathed air but spent its entire life in water, that gave birth to live young in the ocean, that had evolved so completely for aquatic life that returning to land would be impossible. 4 flippers. That's what drives it. 4 massive flippers where legs used to be millions of years ago when its ancestors walked on land. Evolution has transformed limbs into paddles, bones into hydrofoils, feet into propulsion systems that can drive this multi-ton body through water at speeds approaching 30 kilometers per hour, fast enough to outswim most prey, fast enough to make escape nearly impossible once the chase begins. But it's the head that dominates, the head that draws the eye and holds it with a mixture of fascination and horror. It's enormous, nearly a quarter of the animal's total length. The skull is built around the jaws, around the teeth, around the singular purpose of biting and not letting go. The jaws are long, longer than you are tall, and lined with teeth that are conical, interlocking, designed not to cut, but to grip, to pierce, to hold struggling prey while the massive neck muscles do the work of thrashing, of tearing, of dismembering. The teeth are not all the same size. The front teeth are longest, perhaps 30 centimeters, though that's conservative. They project forward, giving the Leopleurodon an underbite that makes it look perpetually aggressive, perpetually ready to strike. Further back, the teeth are slightly smaller, but just as sharp, just as capable of punching through bone, through flesh, through the armor of other marine reptiles. The eyes are large, positioned on the sides of the skull but angled forward enough to give binocular vision, and they're seeing you, or seeing the disturbance you represent in the water. The Leopleurodon alters course slightly, its massive head swinging in your direction. Not aggressive yet, curious, investigating, and you can see the intelligence there. Not human intelligence. Not the problem-solving consciousness of a primate, but something else. Predator intelligence. The kind of awareness that calculates trajectory, that predicts movement, that has learned through trial and error which prey animals to target and which to avoid. The nostrils are positioned high on the skull near the eyes, an adaptation for breathing at the surface without having to lift the entire head. The Leopleurodon can cruise with just the top of its snout breaking the water, breathing while the rest of its body remains submerged, hidden. A stealth predator, an ambush hunter, though it's also capable of high-speed pursuit when necessary. It passes close enough now that you could, if you were physically present, reach out and touch it. The skin is cool, rubbery, patterned with countershading that makes it difficult to see from above or below. Dark on top, light underneath, standard marine camouflage, though at this size, in this time, camouflage seems almost unnecessary. What does the apex predator need to hide from? But the pattern serves another purpose: thermoregulation. The dark dorsal surface absorbs heat from the sun when the animal surfaces. The lighter ventral surface reflects heat, prevents overheating. Even in these warm Jurassic seas, temperature management matters. A reptile this large generates significant metabolic heat, but it still relies partially on external sources. The boundary between cold-blooded and warm-blooded is blurry here. Pliosaurs are mesotherms, somewhere in between, maintaining elevated body temperatures through a combination of internal heat generation and careful behavioral management. The Leopleurodon dives, the body curves, the flippers stroke in coordinated rhythm, and it descends into deeper water with a grace that seems impossible for something so massive. You watch it go, watch the shape dissolve into the blue darkness, becoming shadow, becoming memory, becoming gone. But you're not alone. The Jurassic Ocean is full of life. Something smaller is moving through the water nearby, faster, more agile. The flippers are different, more like wings, creating lift, allowing for three-dimensional maneuvering that seems almost like flight. Ichthyosaur, fish lizard, though it's not a fish and barely a lizard. It's something else entirely, another marine reptile, but from a completely different lineage than the Leopleurodon. Convergent evolution has shaped it into something that looks remarkably like a dolphin. Streamlined body, dorsal fin, tail flukes. But it's not a dolphin. Won't be related to dolphins for another 150 million years. This is what happens when physics demands certain shapes in certain environments. Water doesn't care about taxonomy. It cares about hydrodynamics. This ichthyosaur is perhaps 3 meters long. Small by Jurassic standards, but fast, incredibly fast. You watch it chase something, a fish, quick silver flash in the water, and the acceleration is breathtaking. 0 to full speed in seconds. The tail flukes pumping, the body undulating, the whole animal a missile of muscle and momentum. It catches its prey, the jaws snap shut, and you can see the teeth, hundreds of small, pointed teeth designed for gripping slippery fish. The ichthyosaur doesn't chew, just tilts its head back, swallows whole, already looking for the next meal, because metabolism at this pace requires constant fuel. The eyes are enormous. The largest eyes of any vertebrate ever discovered will belong to an ichthyosaur. Eyes the size of dinner plates, built to gather light in the deep ocean, to hunt in twilight zones where the sun barely penetrates. This individual's eyes are smaller. It hunts in shallower water, but still impressively large, dark, liquid, perfectly adapted for tracking movement in three-dimensional space. You notice the ichthyosaur's skin has a slight iridescence. In certain lights, at certain angles, it shimmer with colors that seem to shift between blue and green, and something that your eyes struggle to process. Structural coloration, microscopic structures in the skin that reflect light in specific wavelengths. Perhaps for species recognition, perhaps for camouflage in sun-dappled water, perhaps for reasons we can only guess at. The water around you is clearing. The sun is penetrating deeper now, and you can see the bottom, perhaps 15 meters down. And what you see is alien. The seafloor is not barren. It's covered in life, but life that looks wrong. Familiar shapes twisted into unfamiliar configurations. There are corals, yes, but Jurassic corals, different families, different structures than modern reefs. There are sponges, some of them enormous, reaching up like sculptures. There are crinoids, sea lilies, their stems anchored to rocks, their feathery arms swaying in the current, filter feeding on the nutrients that drift past. And among them, covering the rocks and the dead coral, are ammonites. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Shells spiraling in logarithmic perfection, each one a chamber within a chamber, each one containing a soft-bodied cephalopod that's related to modern nautilus but not the same, never the same. The shells are beautiful. Some are smooth, some are ridged, some have spines or knobs or elaborated decorations that serve purposes we can only hypothesize about. Hydrodynamics, display, defense against crushing jaws. All of the above, the sizes vary wildly. Some ammonites are small as your fingernail. Others are large as car tires. The largest will eventually grow to 2 meters across. Shells so massive that the animal inside must have struggled with its own buoyancy, must have required careful management of the gas and fluid in its chambers to maintain neutral buoyancy. One ammonite is moving, slowly, using jet propulsion, expelling water through its siphon to push itself backward through the water. The tentacles trail behind or in front given the backward movement, seeking prey, seeking mates, seeking whatever ammonites seek. The eye peers out from the shell opening, dark. Intelligent in its own way, cephalopod intelligence is different from vertebrate intelligence, but it's real. Problem-solving, learning, memory. Something disturbs the water. A shadow, moving fast, coming from above. The ammonites sense it. They're pulling into their shells, sealing the openings, becoming just rocks, just empty spirals on the seafloor. But it's too late for some of them. Mosasaur, no comment. Mosasaurs won't evolve for another 50 million years. This is something else. Another predator. Smaller than the Leopurodon, but still formidable. Perhaps a marine crocodilian. Yes, you can see it now. The armored back. The powerful tail. The jaws that are designed for crunching shells. For breaking open the hard defenses of ammonites and crushing the soft bodies inside. It seizes an ammonite. The jaws close. You hear the crack even underwater. A sharp, decisive snap as the shell gives way. The crocodilian shakes its head, breaking the shell further, accessing the meat inside. The feeding is efficient, practiced. This is a specialist predator, evolved specifically to exploit the abundance of shelled cephalopods that carpet the Jurassic seafloor. The other ammonites remain sealed, waiting. Eventually the predator will leave, sated or frustrated, and they'll emerge again, resume their slow migrations across the bottom, resume their ancient lives that are already ancient, that stretch back to the Devonian, that will continue for another 85 million years until the same asteroid that kills the non-avian dinosaurs also kills them, erasing an entire lineage that survived multiple mass extinctions only to finally succumb. You're rising now, ascending toward the surface. The light is growing brighter, the water warmer, and as you break through into air and sunlight, you see the true extent of the Jurassic Ocean. It stretches forever, endless. The horizon is a perfect line where blue water meets blue sky with no land in sight. This is the interior of the Tethys, open ocean. Thousands of kilometers from any shore, deeper than anything that exists in your time, the ocean floor here won't exist in 150 million years. These plates will subduct, will be consumed by the Earth, will disappear as if they never were. But now, they're home to ecosystems we can barely imagine. In the depths, in the real depths, kilometers down where no light penetrates, there are things we'll never find fossils of. Soft-bodied creatures, gelatinous forms, bioluminescent hunters, creating their own light in the absolute darkness, communicating in flashes and glows, living out their lives in a realm more alien than any planet we've discovered. And in the mid-depths, in the twilight zone where some light penetrates but not much, there are more ichthyosaurs, larger ones. Long-necked plesiosaurs, cousins to the plesiosaurs but with different body plans, long serpentine necks and small heads, hunting strategies based on stealth and sudden strikes rather than raw power. There are giant sharks, not megalodon, that won't appear for another 130 million years, but other species, some of them enormous, some of them with teeth that look like daggers, others with teeth like crushing plates for breaking shells. The Jurassic Ocean is perhaps more alien than the land. On land, at least, there are familiar forms. Trees, ferns, reptiles that, while strange, are still recognizable as reptiles. But the ocean has been experimenting for hundreds of millions of years, trying body plans that have no modern equivalent, filling niches with creatures that seem like fever dreams. The surface is calm now, glassy. The sun is directly overhead and the heat is intense. Even out here, hundreds of kilometers from land, you can feel the humidity, the pressure of warm air sitting heavy on warm water. A storm is building somewhere. You can see the clouds on the distant horizon, towering thunderheads that will spawn rains measured in meters, that will churn the sea and drive creatures deep, seeking shelter from the violence above. But for now, peace. Stillness. The ocean breathing slowly, the swells rising and falling in rhythms that predate consciousness, that will outlast consciousness, that simply are. Something breaks the surface nearby. A plesiosaur perhaps coming up for air. Or an ichthyosaur breaching, though they rarely do that. Waste of energy. Or something else. Something we have no name for because we've never found its bones, because it lived and died without leaving any trace. Because the ocean is vast and preservation is rare, and most of what existed is lost. You could spend lifetimes studying just this one snapshot of the Jurassic Ocean, just this one moment, this one day, this one location. You could catalogue the species, document the behaviours, map the food webs and energy flows and population dynamics, and you'd only scratch the surface. You'd only glimpse a fraction of the complexity, the interconnectedness, the sheer abundance of life that fills every available niche. But time is moving. The sun is tracking across the sky. Afternoon is becoming evening, and the ocean at twilight is different than the ocean at noon. As the light begins to fade, as the water takes on that deep blue-purple colour that precedes night, things change. The diurnal creatures are descending. The nocturnal ones are rising. There's a vertical migration happening right now, one of the largest migrations on Earth, though no one is here to witness it, no one to measure it, no one to understand its significance. Billions of small creatures, plankton, tiny fish, larval forms of larger animals, are rising from the deep where they spent the day hiding from visual predators. They're coming to the surface to feed, to take advantage of the phytoplankton that spent the day photosynthesizing, storing energy that now becomes available to the food chain. And following them upward are the predators, the hunters that have learned to exploit this nightly bounty. Squid, not just squid, but cephalopods of all kinds. Some with shells, some without. Some bioluminescent, glowing with cold light produced by symbiotic bacteria or by their own chemical processes. The water begins to sparkle, shimmer, glow with 1,000 tiny lights as the cephalopods rise and hunt and mate and die in a spectacle that no human eyes will ever witness. The Leopurodon returns. You can see it, or rather see its passage through the bioluminescent water, a dark shape surrounded by disturbed light, by glowing plankton stimulated into luminescence by the turbulence. It's hunting the hunters, taking advantage of their distraction. The jaws open, and even in the dimness you can see the teeth can see the throat, can see into the maw of something that has no fear, no hesitation, no concept of mercy, because mercy is a human invention and humans won't exist for another 149 million years. The strike is over in seconds. Something is caught. Something dies. The bioluminescent water swirls with blood, dark in the fading light but still visible, still marking the location of violence, of survival, of the equation that has no room for sentiment. The stars are emerging. Different stars. The Milky Way stretches across the sky but from a different angle. The constellations are wrong. Polaris is not the North Star. Won't be for another 150 million years as Earth's axis traces its slow precession. But the stars themselves are the same stars, burning in the same ways. Utterly indifferent to what happens on this small blue world orbiting a medium-sized yellow sun in an unremarkable spiral galaxy, the ocean continues its ancient rhythms. The waves rolls. The tides pull. The moon rises, larger than in your time, closer, more present. Its light on the water is silver, beautiful. The same moonlight that will shine on trilobites and dinosaurs and humans and whatever comes after humans, constant and patient and eternal. You're descending now, going down, into the darkness, into the deep water where the last light fades and the ocean becomes truly alien. The pressure increases, the temperature drops, the sounds change, the surface noise fades, replaced by the sounds of the deep, clicks and whistles and moans, communication between creatures that navigate by sound because eyes are useless here, the creak and groan of water itself under pressure, the distant rumble of underwater currents, of thermal vents, of geological processes that shape the ocean floor. And in the absolute darkness, life persists, thrives. Creatures we'll never know about, living out their lives in perpetual night, in pressures that would crush surface dwellers, in temperatures just above freezing. They don't need light, don't need warmth. They need only the chemical energy that seeps from the earth, the nutrients that sink from above, the other creatures that form the basis of deep-sea food webs. This is the other side of the Jurassic, not the sunlit fern prairies, not the towering sauropods, but this, the dark ocean, the deep water, the alien realm that covers most of the planet, that holds most of the biomass, that operates according to rules we're only beginning to understand even in our own time. The ocean floor here is volcanic, new crust forming. The mid-ocean ridge where tectonic plates are pulling apart, where magma is welling up from the mantle, where the earth is literally creating new seafloor. Hydrothermal vents puncture the darkness with heat and chemicals, and around them, ecosystems that don't depend on the sun. Chemosynthetic bacteria forming the base of food chains that lead to tube worms, to crabs, to fish with eyes that have evolved away because sight is irrelevant here. This realm will persist long after the dinosaurs are gone. Long after the continents have rearranged. Long after the Jurassic has become the Cretaceous, has become the Paleogene, has become your own era. The deep ocean endures, changes slowly, holds its secrets in trenches and abyssal plains that we've barely begun to explore, even with our modern technology. But we're surfacing now, rising through the dark water, through the twilight zone, through the layers where light returns and with it the familiar forms, the ichthyosaurs, the plesiosaurs, the sharks, the ammonites, all of them living out their ancient lives in ancient seas that will become rock, that will become mountains, that will weather away and become sand and eventually become new rock in the endless geological cycle. You break the surface, gasp for air, though you don't need air here, don't have lungs here, are just consciousness observing. But the reflex is strong, the need for atmosphere after the crushing pressure of the deep. The shore is visible now, distant, a dark line against the slightly lighter sky, the beach where we began. The transition zone between ocean and land, between one alien world and another. And as you make your way back, as the water grows shallower and warmer, as the bottom comes back into view, you realize something profound. The ocean and the land are not separate. Not really. They're parts of the same system. The rivers carry nutrients to the sea. The seas create the weather that brings rain to the land. The marine reptiles evolved from land reptiles. Some animals move between both realms. The boundaries are fluid, permeable. The planet is one system, one interconnected web of life and geology and atmosphere and ocean, all of it cycling, all of it connected. The waves push you toward shore. Your feet, if you had feet, find the bottom. The sand, the familiar transition from swimming to walking, and as you emerge from the Jurassic Ocean, water streaming from your body, you turn to look back one final time. The Tethys Sea stretches to the horizon, blue and vast and full of life we'll never fully catalogue, never fully understand. The sun is rising now, another Jurassic dawn, painting the water in colours that have no names. Somewhere out there, a Leopeurodon is hunting, an ichthyosaur is diving, an ammonite is crawling across the seafloor. And in the depths, in the darkness, countless other creatures are living out their moments with the same intensity and presence that you live yours. The ocean remembers, the stone records, and sometimes in the fossilized remains of ancient seas we find the evidence. The ichthyosaur skeletons, the ammonite shells, the shark teeth, fragments of a world that existed for millions of years and then vanished, leaving only traces, only hints, only questions that we'll spend lifetimes trying to answer. But the land is calling. The continents, the forests, the creatures that will grow even stranger, even larger, even more impossible as the Jurassic progresses toward its peak. The ocean has shown us one kind of alien world. Now the land will show us another. Because something is happening. Something is changing. Evolution is experimenting, and the experiments are about to produce something that will transform the planet forever. The first flowers are coming, and with them, a revolution that will reshape every ecosystem on Earth. The Cretaceous is approaching, and everything is about to change. Something has changed. You can feel it before you see it, before you understand it. There's a quality to the air that's different, a sweetness, a complexity of scent that wasn't present in the Jurassic. The air smells richer somehow, more layered, as if the world has discovered a new language and is speaking it through chemistry, through volatile compounds that drift on the wind and carry messages your brain struggles to decode. The landscape that materializes around you is familiar and utterly alien simultaneously. There are still ferns, still cycads, still the towering conifers that have dominated for 100 million years. But now there's something else. Something new growing among the ancient forms. Something that catches your eye because the colours are wrong, too bright, too varied, too impossibly vivid for a world that until recently was painted only in shades of green and brown. Colour, not the subtle colorations of dinosaur skin or the iridescence of feathers, but colour. Colour. Reds, yellows, purples, blues, splashed across the landscape in ways that seem almost artificial, almost too saturated to be real. And these colours are coming from, what are they? Structures growing from plants. Small at first, barely noticeable among the larger vegetation, but undeniably present. Undeniably new. Flowers. The word feels inadequate. In your time, flowers are so ubiquitous, so fundamental to how you understand plants, that you've forgotten how revolutionary they are. How strange. How utterly unprecedented in the history of Earth. For 400 million years, plants reproduced through spores or simple seeds or cones. For 400 million years, plants were green and brown and occasionally other colours, but never like this. Never with dedicated structures whose sole purpose is attraction, is advertisement, is beauty weaponized for reproduction. But now, 120 million years ago, the first angiosperms are appearing, the first flowering plants. And they're about to change everything. Walk closer to one of these early flowers. It's growing low to the ground. Most early flowering plants are small, understated, nothing like the roses or orchids or sunflowers that will eventually evolve. This one is perhaps the size of your thumb. 5 petals arranged in a simple pattern. The petals are pale, off-white, or maybe light yellow. Not showy, not dramatic, but present. And in the center, you can see the reproductive structures. The stamens with their pollen, the pistil waiting to be fertilized. The petals are thin, almost translucent in the right light. You can see the veins running through them, vascular tissue carrying water and nutrients to these delicate structures. and the texture is unlike anything in the plant world before this moment. Soft, almost papery, ephemeral. These petals won't last. They're not designed to last. They're designed to exist just long enough to accomplish their purpose, then wither and fall, making room for the next generation. This is the innovation, not permanence, not the slow, patient reproduction of conifers that take years to mature cones and seeds, but speed, efficiency. A flower can bloom, be pollinated and produce seeds in weeks rather than years. This is revolution at the pace of seasons rather than centuries. And the pollinators are here too. An insect lands on the flower, small, perhaps a primitive beetle. It's not here for the plant's benefit. Insects are fundamentally selfish creatures, operating on the simple calculation of energy in versus energy out. But the flower has made an offer: nectar, a sugary reward hidden at the base of the petals. The beetle crawls across the flower, seeking this reward, and in the process, pollen sticks to its body. When it moves to the next flower, that pollen transfers. Fertilization occurs. Seeds develop. This is the contract. The mutualism that will eventually become so sophisticated, so co-evolved, that certain flowers can only be pollinated by certain insects, and vice versa. But here, in the early Cretaceous, it's still primitive, still experimental. The beetles aren't specialized pollinators. They're generalists, eating whatever they can find, and pollination is almost accidental. But it works. It's efficient enough, and efficiency in evolution is everything. The landscape is changing because of these flowers. Slowly at first, they're still rare. If you scan the horizon, you see mostly ferns and conifers and cycads, the traditional Mesozoic vegetation. But the flowers are spreading, growing, diversifying. Evolution is experimenting with petals and colors and scents, trying different strategies, seeing what works. And what works is being selected for with brutal efficiency. The plants that produce the most attractive flowers get pollinated more often, produce more seeds, spread more widely. Their genes proliferate, and with each generation the flowers become slightly more elaborate, slightly more colorful, slightly more fragrant. Within 50 million years, just 50 million, which is rapid in evolutionary terms, flowering plants will dominate almost every terrestrial ecosystem on Earth. They'll produce the grasslands of Africa, the deciduous forests of temperate zones, the tropical rainforests of the equator. The flowers themselves will evolve into thousands of forms, from tiny blooms invisible to the naked eye, to spectacular displays that attract pollinators from kilometers away. But that's the future. Right now, in this moment 120 million years ago, the revolution is just beginning. The early flowering plants are small, humble, growing in the understory, in clearings, in disturbed soil. They're pioneers, colonizers, taking advantage of niches that the larger, slower conifers can't exploit. And the dinosaurs are noticing. Movement in the vegetation draws your attention. Something large is approaching. Not sauropod large. Those are still around, still the titans of the Cretaceous, but they're in different parts of the landscape. This is something else, something you haven't seen before. Iguanodon. One of the most successful herbivores of the early Cretaceous. It's perhaps 10 meters long, though it's hard to judge precisely when only part of it is visible through the foliage. The body is bulky, massive, built to process huge quantities of plant matter. But unlike the sauropods, the iguanodon doesn't have an impossibly long neck. Its head is relatively close to its body, positioned on a neck that's thick and muscular, but not exceptional. What's exceptional is the versatility. You watch as the iguanodon drops from walking on its hind legs to walking on all fours, a shift in posture that seems casual, practiced, as natural as you shifting your weight from one foot to another. This is a facultative biped. It can move on two legs when it needs to, when reaching for high vegetation, when running from predators, when fighting rivals. But it can also move on four legs when that's more efficient, when covering long distances, when feeding on ground-level plants, when resting. The forelimbs are fascinating. They end in hands, but hands unlike any in your time. 5 fingers. The thumb is modified into a spike, a conical weapon perhaps 15 centimeters long, pointing backward from the wrist. The other fingers are more conventional, tipped with blunt claws or hooves. The animal can grasp with these hands, can manipulate vegetation, can defend itself with those thumb spikes if necessary. The head is large, bulky, with a beak at the front of the jaws, a horny, toothless structure designed for cropping vegetation, and rows of grinding teeth further back for processing what the beak has harvested. The eyes are large, positioned high on the skull, giving good all-around vision. Prey animal eyes, always watching, always vigilant. The skin is thick, leathery, covered in small, pebbly scales that are larger and more prominent than on the earlier dinosaurs we've seen. The color is complex, a base of brownish grey, but with darker stripes or spots running along the flanks and back. Not for camouflage, at 10 meters long, hiding is not really an option. More likely for species recognition, for social signaling, for communicating status and health to other iguanodon. And it's eating. That's what caught your attention. The iguanodon has found a cluster of early flowering plants, something with small purple flowers and broad leaves, and is systematically cropping them, using that beak to snip off vegetation, then grinding it with those elaborate dental batteries in the back of the jaws. This is significant. This is one of the first large herbivores to exploit flowering plants as a major food source. The nutritional content is different from conifers and ferns, higher in certain vitamins, different in terms of digestibility, requiring different gut bacteria to process, and the iguanodon's digestive system has adapted, is evidence of evolution's speed when selective pressures are strong enough. Watch how it feeds. There's a delicacy to it, surprisingly. The beak is sensitive. You can see it probing the vegetation, selecting certain plants, certain parts of plants, rejecting others. This is not mindless consumption. This is active choice. The animal has learned what's nutritious, what's toxic, what's worth the energy expenditure of digestion. The iguanodon pauses. The head lifts. The head lifts. The nostrils flare, scenting the air, and then it makes a sound. Not a roar, not aggressive, more like a low, resonant call, somewhere between a moan and a bellow. The sound carries surprisingly far. You can hear it echoing off the distant tree line, and then, from that tree line, a response. Another call. Similar but slightly different in pitch. Another iguanodon, perhaps, or multiple individuals. This is social communication. Contact calls. I'm here. Where are you? Is everything safe? Social behavior. It's easy to forget that these are not just eating and breeding machines. They're social animals, many of them. They form groups, maintain relationships, recognize individuals, communicate in ways we can barely reconstruct from fossil evidence. The sounds they make are lost forever. Sound doesn't fossilize. But we know from anatomy that they had vocal structures, that they could produce calls. That communication was part of their behavioral repertoire. The iguanodon moves on, continuing its feeding, but now you notice others. A small herd, perhaps 5 or 6 individuals, ranging in size from juveniles to full adults. They're spread out across the clearing, each one feeding independently but maintaining awareness of the others. Safety in numbers. More eyes to watch for predators, more individuals to mob a threat if one appears. And threats are always present. The vegetation at the edge of the clearing rustles, not wind, not another herbivore. Something else, something that moves with purpose. With intent, the iguanodon nearest to the disturbance raises its head sharply. The body posture changes, tension visible in every muscle. The thumb spikes come into prominence, turned forward, ready. A warning call, higher pitched, more urgent than the contact calls. The other iguanodon respond immediately. Adults move to position themselves between the threat and the juveniles. Bodies turn, all attention focused on that patch of rustling vegetation. And then it emerges. Utahraptor. Though the name is anachronistic, Utah doesn't exist yet as a geographical concept, won't exist for another 120 million years. But this is the creature, one of the largest dromaeosaurs, the raptors, the intelligent hunters. It's perhaps 6 meters long and stands almost 2 meters tall at the hip. The body is lean, compact, every line speaking of speed and agility. The hind legs are powerful, built for acceleration, for pursuit, for the leap that will bring those killing claws into range. And the claws, the famous sickle claws, are visible even from this distance, curved. raised, held off the ground when the animal walks, preserved sharp, ready to be deployed like switchblades when the moment comes. But it's the head that's most striking. Not large, relatively small in fact, compared to the body, but the eyes. The eyes are front-facing, predator eyes, binocular vision that allows for precise depth perception, for calculating distances, for timing attacks with split-second accuracy. The jaws are filled with recurved, serrated teeth, not for crushing like the Leopleurodon, not for delivering a killing bite like the Allosaurus. These teeth are for slicing, for bleeding out prey, for causing damage that accumulates until the victim can no longer continue. The feathers are what surprise you, even though you know they're coming. This is the Cretaceous, after all. Feathers are no longer primitive structures confined to small dinosaurs. They're everywhere, and the Utahraptor is covered in them. Not flight feathers. This animal is far too large to fly, and its arms are wrong for that purpose anyway. But display feathers. Insulation feathers. Feathers that cover most of the body in a coat that's part scales, part plumage. The colours are extraordinary. Iridescent blues and greens on the arms and tail. Darker patterns, possibly stripes along the back. A crest of longer feathers on the head that can be raised or lowered. That's currently raised in what might be an aggressive display or might be excitement at the prospect of a hunt. The Utahraptor is not alone. Two more emerge from the vegetation. Smaller, younger perhaps, or just different individuals. Raptors hunt in packs. Not always, but often enough that coordinated hunting is clearly part of their behavioral toolkit. They spread out, moving to flank the iguanodon herd, trying to separate an individual, trying to create chaos and exploit it. This is intelligence at work. Not human intelligence. Not tool-making, language-using, abstract thinking intelligence, but problem-solving intelligence. Social intelligence. The ability to coordinate, to communicate through body language and vocalizations, to adjust tactics based on the behavior of prey. The lead Utahraptor makes a sound, a series of sharp staccato chirps, bird-like, which makes sense because birds are dinosaurs, are the only dinosaurs that will survive the coming apocalypse. The other raptors respond, adjust their positions. The coordination is clear even though we can't understand the specifics of the communication. The iguanodon herd has bunched together now, adults on the outside, juveniles protected in the center. Thumb spikes visible. Bodies positioned to present the most defense. This is learned behavior, instinctive behavior. These animals have faced raptors before, many times. This is not their first encounter with coordinated predators. The standoff continues, the raptors circling, testing, looking for weakness, for an opening, for the one individual that's slightly slower, slightly less attentive, slightly more vulnerable. But the iguanodon are holding formation, not panicking, not breaking. The adults are massive compared to the raptors, 5 times the weight, maybe more. A single kick from those powerful hind legs could shatter bone. The thumb spikes could disembowel. The defense is formidable. The math doesn't work. Not today. Not with the herd alert and organized and ready. The lead Utahraptor makes another sound, different this time, lower, perhaps disappointed, or just pragmatic. The raptors back off, slowly. Never turning their backs fully on the iguanodon, but clearly abandoning this particular hunt. They melt back into the vegetation. The feathers compress. The body postures relax slightly, and within seconds they're gone. Invisible. That's the advantage of being small enough to hide. The raptors will find other prey, something solitary, something less alert, something that tips the risk-reward calculation in their favor. The iguanodon hold their defensive formation for several minutes after the raptors disappear. Then, gradually, the tension eases. They spread out again, resume feeding, but the wariness remains. The vigilance, because this is life in the Cretaceous. This is the background hum of survival that accompanies every moment of every day. Eat, watch, communicate, defend, repeat, until injury or age or a predator's moment of advantage makes repetition impossible. The sun is climbing higher, the day is warming, and now, in this heat, you can really appreciate what the flowering plants have brought to the world. The scents are intensifying. Each flower produces its own specific blend of volatile organic compounds, some designed to attract pollinators, some to deter herbivores, some to communicate with other plants about threats like insect damage. The air is a symphony of chemistry. Your nose, if you had a nose here, would be overwhelmed. Too many inputs. Too much information. But the insects are in heaven. Beetles and primitive flies and early bees, not honeybees. Those won't evolve for another 100 million years, but their ancestors, solitary bees that are just beginning to specialize in flower visiting. They move from bloom to bloom, drunk on nectar covered in pollen, inadvertently providing the service that the flowers require. And the flowers are diversifying before your eyes. Not literally, evolution doesn't work that fast, but when you know to look for it, when you understand what's happening, you can see the variety. Even in this early stage, some flowers are producing scent. Others are producing visual displays, patterns on the petals that are only visible in ultraviolet, patterns that guide pollinators to the nectar sources. Some are producing rewards, nectar, pollen, oils. Others are cheating, producing the appearance of rewards without the substance, relying on deception to achieve pollination. This is evolution's laboratory. This is natural selection operating at high speed because the rewards are so great. The flowering plants that find successful strategies will spread explosively. Those that don't will disappear, leaving no trace except perhaps pollen grains preserved in ancient sediments, microscopically small fossils that paleobotanists will spend careers studying. The landscape around you is transitioning. You can see both the old and the new coexisting. The ancient conifers still dominate the canopy. They're tall, well-established, controlling the light. But in the understory, in the gaps, in any space that becomes available, the flowering plants are establishing themselves, growing, spreading, waiting for their moment, and their moment is coming. In another 50 million years, a catastrophe will strike. An asteroid will hit. The dinosaurs will die, and in the chaos, in the environmental devastation, the flowering plants will prove to be more resilient than the conifers, more adaptable, faster to recover. They'll inherit the post-apocalypse world. They'll diversify into forms we can't imagine here in the early Cretaceous. But that's the future. Right now, the dinosaurs still reign. The Cretaceous is their time, their peak, the apex of 165 million years of evolution. The giants are larger than ever. The predators are more refined than ever. The diversity is greater than ever. The iguanodon herd is moving on, leaving the clearing, disappearing into the tree line. The flowers continue blooming, indifferent to the drama of predator and prey. An insect, some beetle with iridescent wing cases, lands on one of the purple flowers we saw the iguanodon eating. The beetle is beautiful in its way. Ancient, unchanged in basic form for hundreds of millions of years. It will outlast the dinosaurs, will survive the asteroid, will persist into your time virtually unchanged. Survival doesn't require being the largest or the strongest. Sometimes it requires being small enough to hide, adaptable enough to eat many things, resilient enough to recover quickly from disaster. The beetles have mastered this. So have many other insect lineages. So have the small mammals that are hiding in burrows, waiting for their moment, surviving in the margins while the dinosaurs dominate the center stage. The flowers rustle in a breeze that's picking up. The scent intensifies momentarily, then disperses. Pollen drifts on the wind, not the heavy, sticky pollen that requires animal pollinators, but wind-pollinated pollen from the conifers and ferns that still reproduce the ancient way. The air is full of it, yellow clouds in the right light, enough to make you sneeze, if you were physically present, if you had sinuses to irritate. This is the Cretaceous, a world in transition. The old forms persisting, the new forms emerging, both coexisting, both successful, both shaping ecosystems in their own ways. It's not a war between old and new, it's a transformation, a gradual shift in the balance of power that will take millions of years to fully manifest. But the seeds are planted, literally and figuratively. The flowering plants are here to stay. They've found an evolutionary strategy that works. That's efficient. That allows rapid reproduction, rapid adaptation, rapid response to changing conditions. And conditions are always changing, continents drifting, climates shifting, sea levels rising and falling, competition intensifying, predators evolving, prey evolving. the environment presenting new challenges every generation, every century, every epoch. Nothing stays still, not in evolution, not in geology, not in the story of life on Earth. Change is the only constant. Adaptation is the only path to survival. The iguanodon have disappeared now. The raptors are gone. The clearing is quiet except for the insects and the breeze and the rustle of vegetation. It's a peaceful moment. A pause in the drama. But the drama is always there, just beneath the surface. Always waiting, because the Cretaceous is not done surprising us. The flowers are just the beginning. There are more wonders ahead, more transformations, more experiments in form and function that will push the boundaries of what's possible. The dinosaurs have reached their zenith, the peak of size, of diversity, of ecological dominance. And we haven't even seen the most famous one yet, the one that will capture human imagination more than any other, the one whose name has become synonymous with power, with fear, with the primal terror of being prey. The tyrant king is coming. And its reign, brief in geological terms but absolute in its moment, will be something to witness. But that's ahead, further in time, closer to the end. For now, the flowers bloom, the insects buzz, the sun shines on a world that's both ancient and new, both familiar and alien, both temporary and eternal in its moment. The Cretaceous continues. And the ground remembers. Always remembers, waiting for us, millions of years in the future, to dig deep enough to find these moments preserved in stone, to reconstruct these worlds from fragments, to wonder at what was and what could never be again. The flowers sway in the breeze, and somewhere far in the future, a paleobotanist will find fossilized pollen from these exact flowers. We'll study it under microscopes, we'll publish papers about it. We'll reconstruct this moment of revolution when flowers first appeared and changed the world forever. The stone holds the story. The fossils preserve the truth. And we, lucky inheritors of deep time, get to read these ancient texts and dream ourselves backward into worlds that shouldn't be possible but were. The revolution is blooming, and nothing will ever be the same. 50 million years have passed since the first flowers bloomed. 50 million years. Long enough for mountains to rise and erode, long enough for continents to drift thousands of kilometers, long enough for evolution to experiment, to fail, to try again, to create forms that seem impossible, and yet here they are, living, breathing, dominating. The world has changed, dramatically. The landscape that materializes around you is more familiar than anything we've seen so far. Not familiar in the sense that you'd recognize specific plants or animals. You wouldn't. But familiar in structure, in composition, in the basic architecture of how an ecosystem is organized. Because flowering plants have won. The understory that was tentative in the early Cretaceous is now dominant. Everywhere you look, magnolias, ancestors of modern oaks, primitive relatives of roses. The conifers still exist, still thrive in certain environments, but they've been pushed to the margins in many ecosystems. The flowering plants have taken over. They grow faster, reproduce faster, recover from damage faster. In the evolutionary race, speed has proven to be a decisive advantage. The air smells complex, rich, layered with the scent of flowers and rotting vegetation and the musky smell of animals, and something else, something sharp and organic that you can't quite place. The humidity is oppressive. This is the late Cretaceous in what will one day be called Montana, though Montana doesn't exist yet. Though this landscape will be buried under layers of sediment and thrust upward by tectonic forces and worn down by glaciers that haven't yet formed. But right now this is the Hell Creek Formation, though it has no name, though no one is here to name it, though it exists only as present moment, only as living reality, with no sense of its own future fossilization. The vegetation is dense, thick, almost jungle-like, though jungle is the wrong word, that implies tropical rainforest. And this is more temperate, warm but not hot, humid but not suffocating. The trees are deciduous, some of them, losing their leaves seasonally. This is new. Seasonal deciduousness is a flowering plant innovation, an adaptation to climates with real winters, with periods when photosynthesis isn't efficient enough to justify maintaining leaves. And it's autumn. You can tell from the colors, yellows and oranges and reds mixed with the greens. Leaves preparing to fall. The first autumn colors in Earth's history, because deciduous trees are new, because this kind of seasonal change is an innovation of the late Cretaceous. Before this, trees were evergreen or they didn't exist. Now there's a third option. Now there's strategic leaf loss and regrowth. Now there are seasons in a way that's more dramatic, more visible, more present than ever before. You're standing at the edge of a river, wide, slow-moving. The water is murky, brown with suspended sediment, with organic matter, with the dissolved minerals of ancient rock. The banks are thick with vegetation. Ferns still, they've persisted, they're adaptable, but also flowering shrubs, primitive grasses perhaps, horsetails that grow tall as your waist. The sound of the river is constant, peaceful. The gurgle and rush of water that's been flowing the same path for thousands of years, carving deeper year by year, carrying sediment towards seas that exist but are far away, beyond the horizon, beyond immediate relevance, and then you feel it before you see it. Before you hear it, you feel it, a vibration in the ground, rhythmic, heavy, getting stronger, getting closer, each pulse sending small ripples across the river's surface, making the water shimmer, making the mud at the bank quiver slightly. Footsteps. Something is approaching, something massive. Something that makes the Allosaurus we saw in the Jurassic seem almost small by comparison. Something that has been refined by another 50 million years of evolution, perfected, optimized, turned into the apex of apex predators. The vegetation ahead, a stand of primitive magnolias mixed with conifers, begins to move, not swaying in wind, being pushed, being shouldered aside. Branches thick as your leg are snapping like twigs. Trunks are being scraped by something passing between them. And then the head emerges first. And oh, that head. It's enormous. Over 1.5 meters long. The skull is pure architecture. Massive temporal fenestrae, huge openings in the bone that reduce weight while maintaining strength, that provide attachment points for jaw muscles so powerful they could generate bite forces exceeding 6 tons per square inch. The snout is blunt, heavy, built not for precision but for raw crushing power. The jaws are slightly open. They're always slightly open because the teeth are too large to be fully concealed. And you can see them, the teeth, each one the size of a human hand. Thick at the base, serrated on the edges. Some are curved like daggers, others are more conical, designed for crushing bone, for punching through armor, for delivering bites that don't just wound but destroy. The eyes are positioned forward, not as forward-facing as the raptors, but forward enough. Binocular vision, depth perception, the ability to judge distances with accuracy that's essential for a predator this size, because mistakes are costly, because injuries at this mass could be fatal, because ambush and precision matter, even for something that weighs 8 tons. The eyes themselves are amber, golden, with pupils that contract in the bright daylight, vertical slits, like a cat, like a crocodile, like a predator that needs to function in variable light conditions, that hunts at dawn and dusk, that requires visual acuity across a range of illuminations. And the eyes are looking at you, or rather, through you, processing you as potential threat, potential prey, potential irrelevance, calculating in whatever passes for thought in that massive brain, a brain that's surprisingly large for a dinosaur, larger than most theropods, sophisticated enough to coordinate complex behaviors, to learn, to remember, to solve problems. Tyrannosaurus rex, though the name is so inadequate it borders on insult. Tyrant lizard king, as if this needs aggrandizement. As if the reality isn't sufficient. As if something this powerful, this refined, this utterly dominant requires linguistic ornamentation to impress. The body follows the head, and it's not what popular culture has taught you to expect. It's not the upright, tail-dragging monster of old museum reconstructions. This is balanced, horizontal. The spine runs parallel to the ground, the massive head counterbalanced by the thick, muscular tail that extends behind. The center of gravity is over the hips, allowing for maneuverability that seems impossible for something this massive, because mass is what strikes you most. This animal is thick, robust. The rib cage is barrel-shaped, huge, containing lungs and heart and digestive system that process enormous quantities of meat. The legs are pillars of muscle and bone. The femur alone is longer than you are tall, thicker than your torso, designed to support and propel 4 tons of predator at speeds that recent biomechanical studies suggest might reach 25 kilometers per hour in short bursts. The arms. Everyone comments on the arms. They seem absurdly small, barely longer than your arms, ending in just 2 fingers each tipped with recurved claws, but they're not vestigial, not useless. You can see the muscles, thick, powerful. These arms could lift several hundred pounds, could grip, could assist in rising from a prone position, could hold prey during feeding. Small, yes, but functional. Everything on this animal is functional because evolution is ruthlessly efficient and doesn't maintain structures that don't contribute to survival. The skin is textured, not covered in feathers. Rex is probably too large for extensive feathering, though there might be some on the head or neck for display purposes. Instead, the skin is composed of small, pebbly scales on most of the body, larger scales forming patterns, rosettes, arrangements that might provide flexibility in certain areas, armor in others. The color is what surprises you, even though you knew it was coming, knew that these animals weren't the drab greys and greens of movie monsters. This tea. Rex has reddish-brown coloration along the back, fading to lighter cream along the belly, counter-shading that makes it harder to see in dappled forest light. But there are also markings, patterns, dark stripes or spots along the flanks, and on the face, around the eyes, along the jaw. There might be brighter colors, reds, oranges, display coloration for species recognition, for intimidation, for courtship. This is not a monster. This is an animal, a real living, breathing animal with a biology, a behavior, an ecology. It has problems. It gets hungry. It gets injured. It ages. It can be sick. It competes with rivals. It seeks mates. It's not evil. Evil is a human concept that has no application here. It's just efficient, successful. The end result of millions of years of selective pressure favoring the biggest, strongest, most effective predator. The T-Rex stops, stands motionless, and you can hear it breathing. Deep, resonant inhalations, the chest expanding visibly with each breath. The air moving through a respiratory system that's more efficient than yours, that uses air sacs extending into the bones, that extracts more oxygen per breath, that supports a metabolism high enough to power this enormous body, and then it makes a sound, not a roar. Roaring is for movies. Real predators don't announce their presence unnecessarily. This is lower, deeper, a rumble that you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. Something between a growl and a bellow produced by vocal cords that are longer than your arm, resonating in nasal cavities that amplify and modulate the sound. It's a frequency that carries far. You can hear it echoing through the forest, bouncing off trees, traveling for kilometers. Communication, perhaps. Territory announcement. Or just vocalization. The sound of being alive, of breathing, of existing in a moment of time that will never come again. The T. Rex lowers its head toward the river. The movement is surprisingly graceful, controlled, balanced, the tail rising as the head descends to maintain equilibrium. The jaws open wider. You can see the jaw joints now, positioned far back on the skull, allowing for a gape that's enormous, that could fit your entire torso between those teeth. It drinks. The tongue, thick, muscular, probably rough-textured, laps at the water. Not delicate sips like the Diplodocus, substantial mouthfuls. Liters at a time, the throat muscles working to move water down into that massive body. Even hydration at this scale is dramatic, requires quantities that seem excessive, requires minutes rather than seconds. And while it drinks, you can study it, can see the details. The scarring on the snout, old wounds, healed, evidence of a long life of confrontations survived. The slight wear on some of the teeth, they're constantly being replaced throughout life. New teeth growing in behind damaged ones, but at any given moment some are fresher than others, some are more worn. The small ticks or mites visible in the folds of skin, parasites that have co-evolved with these giants, but live out their entire lives in the ecosystem of a single dinosaur's body. This individual is old. You can tell from the size, from the robustness, from the accumulation of scars. This is a survivor. Something that's managed to live 15 years, maybe 20, in a world where most predators die young, from injury, from starvation, from competition with rivals. This one has beaten the odds. Has become one of the rare individuals that reaches full maturity, that achieves maximum size, that dominates its territory absolutely. The drinking stops. The head lifts. Water drips from the jaws, patters into the river. The T-Rex stands motionless again, and you realize it's scenting the air. The nostrils flare. The head turns slightly, processing odors on the wind. The olfactory bulbs in that brain are large, disproportionately large. Scent is crucial, more important than vision in many hunting scenarios. The ability to detect a carcass from kilometers away. To smell blood. To follow scent trails through dense vegetation where sight is useless and it's found something. You can see the body language change. The slight shift in posture. The increased tension. The head orienting in a specific direction. Upstream, maybe half a kilometer away. Something is there. Something interesting. The T-Rex begins to move, and the movement is not what you expect. Not slow. Not lumbering. Fast. Purposeful. Each step covering 3 meters, the tail swinging slightly for balance, the body moving with coordination that seems impossible for something this massive, but which is reality, which is physics and biomechanics operating exactly as they should. You follow, or rather, the scene shifts, consciousness moving to keep pace. Through the dense vegetation, past the flowering magnolias that are ancestors to trees you'd recognize, that produce blooms large as dinner plates, white and fragrant, past the primitive palms that have recently evolved, that are experimenting with this new body form, past the ferns and horsetails and club mosses that have been here since before dinosaurs existed and will outlast them. The smell hits before you see the source. Death, decay, the specific odor of large animal decomposition, sweet and rotten simultaneously. The smell that attracts scavengers, that signals opportunity to those who can stomach it. The carcass is in a clearing. A Triceratops, also dead. Massive, nearly as large as the T-Rex, perhaps 9 meters long, weighing maybe 8 tons when it was alive. But it's been dead for days. The body is bloated with decomposition gases. The skin has split in places. Scavengers have been at it. Small dinosaurs, perhaps, or pterosaurs, or any of the countless opportunistic feeders that exist in this ecosystem, but they scatter now. They feel the ground shaking. They sense or see or smell the approaching apex predator, small shapes fleeing into the vegetation. A pterosaur, large perhaps 3-meter wingspan, flapping heavily away, its crop probably full of carrion, too heavy to fly with optimal efficiency. The T-Rex approaches the carcass, circles it once, assessing. Even scavenging requires care. Decomposed meat can be dangerous. Botulism, other pathogens. The animal's immune system is robust, probably handles things that would kill you instantly. But there are limits. Even T-Rex can get sick. The assessment complete, the feeding begins. And it's brutal, efficient. The jaws open wide and close on the Triceratops' hind leg. The teeth penetrate, bite down, and you hear the bones crunch. Actually crunch. Crack. Splinter. The bite force is so enormous that the femur, a bone that could support 8 tons of living weight, shatters like dry wood. The head shakes. The neck muscles, visible beneath the skin, thick as ship cables, contract and pull. A chunk of meat tears free. Leg meat, bone fragments, hide, all of it. Perhaps 30 kilograms in a single bite. The T-Rex tilts its head back slightly. Gravity assists now, and swallows. Not chewing. No time for chewing. The teeth are for tearing, for breaking, for accessing. The stomach will handle the rest. A gastric system so acidic it can dissolve bone, that can extract nutrients from every part of a carcass, that wastes nothing. Another bite. The ribs this time. The jaws close around the rib cage, and you hear the sound of ribs breaking, of thoracic vertebrae fracturing. The head pulls back and comes away with a massive section. Organs, bone, everything. The feeding is messy. Blood and fluids are dripping. The T-Rex's jaws are coated, but it doesn't care. Appearance is irrelevant. Only calories matter. Only fuel. This will continue for hours. The T-Rex might consume 100 kilograms or more in a single feeding session, enough to sustain it for days. The metabolism is high, must be high to support active hunting behavior, but not so high that constant feeding is required. A successful hunt or a good scavenging opportunity might provide sustenance for a week, but then something changes. The T. Rex stops feeding. The head rises. The body turns alert, tense. Another sound, different from the one the T-Rex made. Higher pitched, responding. There's another one. Another T-Rex, approaching. This one is smaller, younger, perhaps only half the mass of the feeding individual, but still formidable, still dangerous, still a tyrannosaur with all that implies. The two face each other across the carcass 40 meters apart. Close enough to see details, close enough to smell each other, close enough that this could escalate quickly into violence. The larger one, the feeding individual, makes a sound, deep, resonant, threatening. The jaws open in a display that shows the full dentition, shows the blood coating the teeth, shows the size and power of the bite apparatus. The body posture becomes more aggressive, head lowered slightly, tail rigid. This is threat display. This is leave now or face consequences. The smaller one responds, but differently. The head doesn't lower. The posture is more submissive, not frightened. T. Rex doesn't really do fear, but acknowledging, recognizing the size differential, calculating that direct confrontation would be costly, possibly fatal, but not leaving, not yet. Because carrion this large is rare, because opportunities like this are precious, because starvation is also fatal, and pride doesn't fill an empty stomach. A standoff. Tense. Both animals motionless except for slight movements of the head, constant assessment, constant calculation of risk versus reward, and then the larger one makes a decision. Steps aside. Not far, just enough to allow access to a different part of the carcass. Not generosity. T-Rex doesn't do generosity. But pragmatism. The carcass is large enough for both. Fighting is risky even for the likely winner. Energy spent fighting is energy not spent eating. Better to share, in this instance, than to escalate to violence. The smaller one approaches, carefully, watching the larger individual constantly, ready to flee if the tolerance proves temporary. But the larger one returns to feeding, takes another massive bite from the ribcage area, ignoring the newcomer as long as space is maintained, as long as boundaries are respected. The smaller one begins to feed on the hindquarters, the same brutal efficiency, the same bone-crushing bites, the same tilted-back swallowing of massive chunks. Two apex predators sharing a meal not out of social bonding, but out of mutual calculation that cooperation, in this specific moment, benefits both parties. This is the social complexity that fossil evidence struggles to capture. T-Rex probably wasn't a pack hunter. The evidence doesn't really support coordinated group hunting like raptors, but nor was it purely solitary. It had social interactions, could recognize individuals, could assess relative dominance, could make decisions about when to fight and when to tolerate. The behavior is more complex than mindless eating machine, more nuanced than movie monsters, more real. You're watching history, not the grand sweep of evolutionary time, but history in the sense of moments that happened once, that were real, that were lived. This specific feeding session, these specific individuals, this specific afternoon in the late Cretaceous 70 million years ago, in a place that will one day be called Montana. The feeding continues. The sun tracks across the sky. Afternoon becomes late afternoon. The light takes on that golden quality that precedes evening. The temperature drops slightly. Not much. The late Cretaceous is warm, but noticeably. Other scavengers are gathering at the margins, keeping distance, waiting for the tyrannosaurs to leave or to be sated enough that they stop defending the carcass. Small theropods, perhaps ornithomimids, ostrich-like dinosaurs with long necks and beaked jaws, fast runners that specialize in eating almost anything, a few pterosaurs circling overhead, patient, ready to descend the moment opportunity presents. The Triceratops carcass is being dismantled systematically. What was a multi-ton animal this morning will be scattered bones by tomorrow. Nothing is wasted in this ecosystem. The tyrannosaurs take their share, smaller predators will take theirs. Insects will consume the scraps, bacteria and fungi will break down what remains. The nutrients will return to the soil, will feed the plants, will complete the cycle. Death is not an ending here. Death is a transformation, a transfer of energy from one form to another. Triceratops' atoms will become part of other organisms. Some of them might eventually become part of a tyrannosaur. The calcium in its bones might end up in a magnolia tree. The carbon in its flesh might be exhaled as CO2 by a beetle, then absorbed by a fern, then eaten by another herbivore, round and round. The great cycle that has no beginning and no ending. The larger T-Rex is done feeding. Its belly is distended, visibly full. Moving will be difficult for a while. The weight of 100 kilograms of meat and bone in the gut is substantial. Even for a tyrannosaur, it needs to rest, to digest, to wait while the powerful gastric acids do their work. It moves away from the carcass, slowly now. The aggressive grace of hunting replaced by the cautious movements of an animal that's vulnerable, that's temporarily less capable, that knows it needs to find a safe place to process this meal. The smaller tyrannosaur continues feeding, getting while the getting is good, consuming as much as possible before being forced away by its own fullness or by the arrival of more competitors. The larger one finds a spot, a depression in the ground near some fallen logs, partially shaded by low-hanging branches. It lowers itself down, and this is a process, a careful distribution of weight, the tail bracing, the legs folding, the body settling into a position that's stable, that's defensible, that allows for rest without complete vulnerability. And it closes its eyes, not deeply asleep. Predators don't sleep deeply in exposed locations, but resting, conserving energy, letting the digestive system work. This is real. This is what being T-Rex actually meant. Not constant action, not endless hunting, but this, periods of intense activity followed by periods of rest. Feast or famine, the basic pattern of predator existence that hasn't changed in hundreds of millions of years, that won't change in the millions more to come. The sun is setting now. The late Cretaceous twilight is spectacular. The sky is painted in colours, oranges and purples and reds that are intensified by the atmospheric composition, by the volcanic activity that's been increasing, by the dust and particles that scatter light in ways that create these impossible sunsets. The smaller tyrannosaur is still feeding, making the most of this opportunity. But even it will have to stop soon. There's only so much that can be consumed in a single session, only so much that can be safely digested. The forest is transitioning to its nocturnal state. Different sounds emerge. Something calls in the distance, a mammal perhaps, one of the many small nocturnal mammals that are thriving in the margins, that will inherit the world when the dinosaurs are gone, but which right now are just bit players, just survival specialists in the spaces the giants don't occupy. This is normalcy. This is a typical day in the late Cretaceous. Birth, death, feeding, resting, competition, cooperation. The great drama of life playing out in countless variations, in endless iterations, day after day, year after year, epoch after epoch. And it will continue. For another 6 million years, the tyrannosaurs will reign, will dominate, will be the apex of the apex, the most successful large predators Earth has ever produced. They'll adapt to changing environments. They'll diversify into new species. They'll fill every available predatory niche in their ecosystems. And then, on a day that seems normal, on a morning that begins like any other, something will appear in the sky, something bright, something fast, something that will end this world and begin another. But that's still ahead, still in the future. For now, in this moment under this sunset, the tyrannosaurs rest, fed, successful, unaware that their reign is temporary, that their dominance is fragile, that the world they know is about to end. The stone will remember, the fossils will preserve, and millions of years from now, a species that doesn't yet exist will dig up their bones and wonder at them, will reconstruct them, will try to understand what it meant to be Tyrannosaurus rex on a world that was young and strange and ruled by giants. The night falls, the stars emerge, wrong stars, alien constellations, but beautiful nonetheless. The tyrannosaurs sleep, and the Cretaceous continues its ancient rhythms, unaware that time is running out, that change is coming, that nothing, no matter how powerful, how successful, how dominant, is permanent. Everything ends, everything changes, The only constant is impermanence, but for now, the tyrant kings rest, and the world is theirs for a little while longer. We need to go backward, sideways, outside the linear progression of time, because there's a story we haven't told yet. A story that's been happening parallel to everything we've witnessed. A revolution that's been unfolding not in size, not in mass, not in dominance, but in a different direction entirely, upward, into the air, into a dimension that the land-bound giants could never access. The story of how dinosaurs learned to fly, or rather, and this is crucial, how some dinosaurs never stopped being small, never joined the race toward gigantism. Instead, they experimented with something else, with lightness. With hollow bones and modified scales and the physics of lift and drag and thrust. Let's start in the late Jurassic, 115 million years ago, before the flowering plants, before the tyrannosaurs. In a world that's still dominated by sauropods and stegosaurs, by the architecture of mass. The forest is dense, humid. The trees are tall, conifers and tree ferns reaching toward a sky that's perpetually hazy with moisture. And in the canopy, something is moving. Something small, something that doesn't shake the ground, doesn't announce its presence with thundering footsteps. Watch the branches. That one. There. Movement. Quick, precise. A shape perhaps the size of a crow, but definitely not a crow. The body is too elongated, the tail too long, the head too reptilian. And the way it moves, scrambling along the branch with a combination of running and gripping, claws finding purchase on bark, balance maintained by that long stiff tail, is unlike any bird. Archaeopteryx. The name means ancient wing, though that translation doesn't capture the profound strangeness of what this creature represents. It's not a bird. Not quite. But it's not a dinosaur. Not quite. It's both. It's the fuzzy boundary between categories. The transitional form that shouldn't exist according to anti-evolutionists, but does exist. Did exist. Left fossils so perfectly preserved that we can see individual feathers imprinted in stone. Look at those feathers. Really look at them. They're asymmetrical. The leading edge is narrower than the trailing edge, creating an airfoil shape that generates lift. This is not display plumage. This is functional. Flight feathers, evolved specifically for the purpose of controlled movement through air. The feathers on the arms, we can't call them wings yet, but they're getting there, are long, overlapping, creating a surface that can push against air, that can generate the forces necessary to overcome gravity. But the body underneath is still fundamentally dinosaurian. The jaws contain teeth, sharp, pointed, recurved teeth designed for gripping insects or small vertebrates. No beak yet. Beaks will come later, much later, as birds continue to evolve. For now, teeth are retained. Functional. Necessary. The hands. And they are hands, with 3 separate fingers visible beneath the wing feathers, end in claws. The fingers are long, mobile, capable of gripping branches, capable of grasping prey. These aren't fused into the rigid wing structure of modern birds. They're still individual digits, still retaining the ancestral function while beginning to serve a new one. And that tail, that long, bony tail that extends behind for perhaps half the animal's total length, each vertebra clearly defined, stiff, inflexible except at the base, nothing like the short, fleshy tail of modern birds. This is a dinosaur tail, a theropod tail, with feathers along its length, paired feathers on either side of each vertebra, creating a structure that might provide steering in flight, that might enhance balance, that's almost certainly doing something important or evolution wouldn't have maintained it. The Archaeopteryx launches from the branch, and the flight is awkward. Not the smooth, confident flight of a modern bird, more like controlled falling. The wings beat. You can see the individual feather shafts flexing with the stroke, but the motion is inefficient. The body wobbles. The tail swings for balance. The trajectory is more glide than powered flight. A shallow descent toward a lower branch perhaps 10 meters away. But it works. The Archaeopteryx reaches the target branch, lands with a scramble of claws, maintains its grip. This is flight. Primitive flight. Experimental flight. But flight nonetheless. movement through three-dimensional space, access to resources that ground-dwelling dinosaurs can't reach, escape routes that predators can't follow. This is the beginning. The first chapter in a story that will eventually produce eagles and hummingbirds and albatrosses, that will give rise to creatures that can cross oceans, that can hover motionless, that can dive at speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. But that's millions of years in the future. Right now, this is just a small theropod that's learned a new trick, that's begun to exploit a new niche. The feathers themselves, let's look closer at one. Because feathers are not simple structures. They're not just modified scales, though that's their evolutionary origin. They're engineering marvels, complex, hierarchical. The central shaft, the rachis, is hollow but reinforced, lightweight but strong. From it branch the barbs, dozens of them on each side, creating the feather's flat surface. And from each barb branch smaller structures, barbules, and from each barbule even smaller hooks that interlock with the barbules of adjacent barbs, zipping the feather together into a unified surface. Like Velcro, but organic, but evolved millions of years before humans would independently discover the same principle. The colour? We're not entirely sure what colour Archaeopteryx was. The fossils are extraordinarily well preserved, but colour is one of the things that's hardest to preserve, hardest to reconstruct. There are hints, melanosomes visible in some specimens, microscopic structures that contained pigment that might tell us whether the feathers were black or brown or reddish. But the full palette, the patterns, lost. Gone. One of the thousands of details that fossilization can't capture. But imagine it. Imagine a small dinosaur with wings of iridescent blue-black, like a raven, or with russet and cream patterns like a kestrel, or with mottled browns and greys like a nightjar, camouflaged perfectly against tree bark. Any of these are possible. All of these might have existed in different species, different individuals, different populations, separated by geography or time. The Archaeopteryx on this branch is preening now, drawing individual feathers through its beak, no, through its jaws, because it still has teeth, realigning the barbules, repairing the damage from that awkward flight, maintaining the flight surfaces. This is instinctive, programmed by evolution. Necessary because damaged feathers mean compromised flight, means vulnerability to predators means death. But let's jump forward now. Let's skip ahead 80 million years into the Cretaceous and see what evolution has done with this basic body plan. The forest is different now. Flowering plants have arrived, have diversified, have created new structures, new resources, new opportunities. And the flying dinosaurs, we can call them birds now mostly, though the boundaries remain fuzzy, have diversified alongside them. There, in that tree, a small shape, perhaps the size of a sparrow, moving with quick, jerky movements that are instantly recognizable as bird-like, even though you know this is still technically a dinosaur, still part of the same lineage that produced Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, Confucius ornis, one of the earliest beaked birds. The jaws have lost their teeth, replaced by a horny beak that's lighter, that requires less maintenance, that can be shaped by evolution into countless specialized forms for different diets, different behaviors, different ecological niches. The flight is better now, more controlled. The wings stroke with rhythm and purpose. The tail is different, no longer that long, bony structure. It's been shortened, compressed, fused into a stumpy structure called a pygostyle that supports a fan of tail feathers. Less drag, more maneuverability, more efficient. But here's something fascinating. Sexual dimorphism is clearly visible. This individual, a male, based on the long, elaborate tail feathers that stream behind it, is displaying. The tail feathers are ornamental, impractical for flight, maintained purely for attraction, for showing potential mates that he has genes good enough to survive despite this handicap. Sexual selection driving evolution in directions that have nothing to do with survival, and everything to do with reproduction. The female nearby lacks these elaborate feathers. Her tail is shorter, more practical. Her coloration is more subdued. She's watching the male's display with what might be assessment, might be judgment, might be calculations about genetic qualities based on the symmetry of his feathers, the brightness of his colors, the vigor of his flight. This is new. This kind of complex social behavior, this sexual selection, this display, it's all being pioneered here in the Cretaceous by these early birds. And it's working. The diversity of bird-like dinosaurs is exploding. Every ecological niche that can support a small, flying insectivore or seed-eater is being filled. The adaptive radiation is proceeding at incredible speed by geological standards. But let's look at something even stranger. Something that shows just how experimental evolution was being during this period. Microraptor. Found in early Cretaceous deposits. And it's bizarre. Beautiful, but bizarre. It's small, perhaps the size of a pigeon. But the body plan is unlike anything that exists today, unlike anything that will exist in the future. Because this dinosaur has 4 wings. 4 wings. Not 2 wings and a tail fan like modern birds. 4 functional wing surfaces. The arms have flight feathers. Yes, as expected. But so do the legs. Long asymmetrical flight feathers extend from the hind limbs, creating secondary wing surfaces that must have produced additional lift, additional control surfaces, additional complexity in the aerodynamics. The fossil evidence is unambiguous. The feathers are preserved in exquisite detail, their arrangement clear, their function obvious. This animal flew. But how? How did it coordinate 4 wings? What configuration did it use? Did it glide primarily, using the 4 wings to create a biplane-like structure? Did it flap all 4 wings in coordination? Did the hind wings serve as additional control surfaces, like the tail feathers of modern birds? We don't know. We can't know. This experiment, this 4-winged flight, didn't persist. Microraptor left no descendants. Its lineage ended. The 2-winged configuration proved more successful, more efficient, more capable of evolving into the diverse forms that would eventually fill the skies. But for a time, for millions of years in the early Cretaceous, there were dinosaurs with 4 wings, flying through forests that don't exist anymore, hunting insects that left no fossils, living out their brief evolutionary moment before being replaced by more successful designs. The colours, though, the colours we know. Some of the Microraptor fossils preserve melanosomes in such detail that scientists can reconstruct the coloration with reasonable confidence. And the answer is striking. Iridescent black, glossy, raven-like plumage that would have shimmered blue and green in the right light. This wasn't camouflage. This was display. This was beauty for the sake of beauty, or rather, beauty for the sake of reproduction, which is nature's only real motivation for creating beautiful things. Watch it now, there, in the canopy, launching from a branch. The 4 wings spread. The body tilts. The trajectory is steep, controlled, a gliding swoop that carries it downward and forward between trees, toward another perch. The hind wings are angled differently than the 4 wings, creating complex airflows generating lift in multiple planes simultaneously. It's alien. It's extinct. It's evolution trying something that didn't work in the long run but which worked well enough for long enough that these animals thrived for millions of years. And let's look at one more. One more step along the path from dinosaur to bird. One more experiment in the evolution of flight. Hesperornis, late Cretaceous. But this one went in a different direction entirely. It's in the water, a marine environment, swimming, and it's huge compared to the others we've seen, perhaps 2 meters long. But the wings have regressed, reduced to tiny, functionless vestiges pressed against the body. This is a bird that gave up flight, that returned to the water. That evolved into something like a loon or a grebe, diving for fish, using its powerful legs for propulsion, its reduced wings useless except perhaps for balance in the water. The feet are lobed, adapted for swimming. The body is streamlined. The beak, yes, beak, because this is definitely a bird, definitely has lost its teeth. Wait. No, look closer. The beak has teeth. Small teeth embedded in the jaw, visible when the mouth opens to catch a fish. This is a bird with teeth. An evolutionary throwback or a retention of primitive features. Either way, it's evidence that the transition from toothed dinosaurs to toothless birds wasn't clean, wasn't linear, wasn't a simple progression, but a complex branching with reversals and experiments and countless failed attempts. Hesperornis will go extinct. The asteroid that kills the non-avian dinosaurs will kill this lineage too. But while it exists, it's successful. It fills a niche. It survives. It reproduces. It matters. The diversity of bird-like dinosaurs in the late Cretaceous is staggering. There are tiny insectivores, larger carnivores, seed-eaters, fish-eaters, waders, swimmers, gliders, powerful flyers. Every imaginable variation on the basic theme of small theropod with feathers has been tried. Some work better than others. Some leave descendants, many don't. But the general pattern is clear. Dinosaurs are shrinking. Or rather, some lineages are shrinking, are moving in the opposite direction from the giants we've been following, are finding success in smallness, in flight, in the ability to escape predators, to access resources, to survive in ways that don't require being the biggest or the strongest. And this will save them. When the asteroid comes, when the giant dinosaurs die, when the world burns and freezes and collapses, the small flying dinosaurs will survive. Some of them, not all. Many bird lineages will go extinct too. But enough will make it through, enough will survive to repopulate the world, to diversify again, to eventually produce 10,000 species, from hummingbirds to ostriches, from penguins to eagles. The birds are dinosaurs. Still, today, right now, in your time, every pigeon you see, every sparrow, every crow, every eagle, they're all dinosaurs. They're the surviving members of a lineage that's 230 million years old. They're living fossils, though we don't usually think of them that way because they're so common, so present, so integrated into every ecosystem. But they are. They're survivors. They're the descendants of these experimental flyers, these feathered theropods, these small dinosaurs that tried something different and succeeded beyond any reasonable expectation. Let's watch one more, one final example, because this is important. This is the key to understanding how dinosaurs didn't really go extinct, how they're still here. How extinction is never complete, never total, never final. As long as some lineage persists, some genes continue, some information gets passed down. A nest in the late Cretaceous, hidden in the underbrush, protected by the parent, a small theropod perhaps similar to Troodon, with feathers covering most of its body, with forward-facing eyes that suggest intelligence, problem-solving ability, awareness. Inside the nest, 4 of them, small, elliptical. The shells are thin, thinner than reptile eggs, thicker than modern bird eggs. A compromise, an intermediate stage. One egg is cracking. The baby inside is breaking through, using an egg tooth, a small calcified projection on the tip of its snout that exists only for this purpose, that will fall off days after hatching the shell fragments. The baby emerges. It's tiny, helpless, eyes closed, covered in downy feathers that provide some insulation but not much. This is altricial hatching born dependent, requiring parental care, unlike the precocial young of many reptiles that hatch ready to fend for themselves. The parent responds immediately, brings food, an insect crushed and partially digested, easier for the chick to swallow. This is parental care. This is investment in offspring. This is a strategy that will serve birds well, that will allow for complex learned behaviors, for cultural transmission of information, for the intelligence that will eventually allow some birds to use tools, to solve puzzles, to recognize themselves in mirrors. The chick feeds, grows. In weeks it will fledge, in months it will be independent. And if it's lucky, if it survives the countless dangers of existence in the late Cretaceous, it will reproduce, will pass on its genes, will contribute to the lineage that will survive the apocalypse. Because that's coming. The asteroid, the end of the Cretaceous. The extinction event that will be so catastrophic, so complete, so devastating that it will erase 75% of all species on Earth, but not this lineage. Not the small, flying, feathered theropods. They'll make it through. How? We're not entirely sure. Maybe they could survive on seeds when other food sources collapsed. Maybe their ability to fly allowed them to escape local disasters, to find resources when everything else was dying. Maybe it was just luck, the right species in the right places when the world ended and began again. But survive they did, and diversified again, and became the 10,000 species of modern birds, became the living dinosaurs that fly over your head every day, that nest in your trees, that sing at dawn, that migrate across continents, that prove that extinction is never total, that life persists, that evolution continues. The feathered dinosaurs are still here, changed, modified, evolved, but still dinosaurs, still carrying genes that are hundreds of millions of years old, still building nests and laying eggs and raising young in ways that their ancestors did in the Triassic, in the Jurassic, in the Cretaceous. The giants are gone, the titans are fossils. But the small ones, the ones that learned to fly, that mastered the air, that found a niche that would save them, they endure. Look up. That bird, any bird, that's a dinosaur. A real living dinosaur, a survivor of catastrophe, a descendant of creatures that walked with Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, a link to deep time, a messenger from the Mesozoic. The stone remembers the giants, the fossils preserve the titans, but the living dinosaurs, the birds, they remember nothing. They carry no awareness of their history, their lineage, their extinct cousins. They simply live, simply exist, simply continue the ancient patterns of survival and reproduction that have persisted for longer than we can truly comprehend. Feathers and flight, that's the secret. That's the innovation that saved some dinosaurs when all the others died. Not size, not strength, not dominance, but adaptability, lightness, the ability to move through 3 dimensions instead of 2. The sky saved them, and the sky remains theirs. 10,000 species. 10,000 variations on the theme of feathered flight. 10,000 proofs that dinosaurs aren't extinct. They're all around us. They always have been. We just stopped calling them dinosaurs and started calling them birds. But the connection remains. The lineage persists. The story continues. And somewhere in the late Cretaceous, before the end, a small feathered dinosaur takes flight, rises into the air on wings that evolution has been perfecting for millions of years. Doesn't know that its descendants will inherit the world, doesn't know that it's practicing for survival, doesn't know anything except the simple imperative to live, to feed, to reproduce. And it's enough. That simple imperative, that basic drive, that ancient instinct, it's enough to carry this lineage through the apocalypse and into the world that follows. The birds are coming. They're already here. They've always been here, flying through deep time, connecting past and present, proving that extinction is never complete, that life finds a way, that the dinosaurs never really died. They just grew feathers and learned to fly, and they're still flying right now. Outside your window, in the tree, in the sky, everywhere, living dinosaurs, survivors of deep time. The proof that even when worlds end, something persists, always. It's a Tuesday. Not really. The 7-day week won't be invented for another 66 million years, won't have meaning until humans create calendars and structure time into manageable units. But if we could assign a day of the week to this moment, it would feel like a Tuesday. Ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of day that passes without notice, that leaves no impression, that feels like 1,000 days before it and 1,000 days that will come after. Except there won't be 1,000 days after. There won't be one day after. Not for most of the creatures living through this moment. This is the last day, the final spring morning, the end of an era that no one knows is ending. The landscape is the Hell Creek Formation again, Montana that isn't Montana, North America that barely resembles the geography you know. The coastline is different. The western interior seaway still exists, a vast body of water splitting the continent in half, though it's retreating, shallowing, will eventually disappear completely. The climate is warm, humid, subtropical even at these latitudes that in your time are temperate, that know snow and ice for half the year. But not now. Not in the late Cretaceous. Now it's perpetual summer, endless growth. Vegetation so lush it seems almost excessive, almost wasteful in its abundance. The sun is rising, the light is soft, golden, filtering through morning mist that hangs over the river valley. The air smells of wet earth and flowering plants. And the river itself, that particular scent of fresh water, of algae and fish and the mineral content dissolved from rocks upstream. Birds are calling, real birds now, not just Archaeopteryx or Confucius ornis, but species that would look almost familiar if you saw them. Small passerines, early relatives of ducks and geese, primitive shorebirds probing the mud for invertebrates. Everything is normal, perfectly, completely, unremarkably normal. A triceratops is drinking at the river's edge, adult. perhaps 20 years old, covered in scars from territorial disputes, from encounters with predators, from the simple wear of existing for 2 decades in a world that's never gentle, never safe. The 3 horns are impressive, the 2 brow horns perhaps a meter long, the nasal horn shorter but still formidable. The frill is large, ornate with scalloped edges that might be for species recognition, for display, for appearing larger to rivals or predators. The skin is thick, grey-brown, with a pebbly texture that's almost elephant-like. But there are patches where the coloration is different. Reddish pigmentation around the eyes, darker stripes or spots on the frill. These aren't random, they're signalling. Communication through pattern. This is my species. This is my gender. This is my health status. This is my genetic quality. The Triceratops lifts its head from the water, chews slowly, the dental batteries in the back of the jaws grinding plant matter, breaking down the tough vegetation into digestible pulp. The eyes are alert, scanning the tree line, watching for danger even in this peaceful moment. Vigilance is never optional. Relaxation is a luxury that predation doesn't allow. Further upstream, a group of Edmontosaurus are moving through shallow water. These are the duckbills, the hadrosaurs, some of the most successful herbivores of the late Cretaceous. Perhaps 10 individuals in this group, ranging from juveniles to full adults, that might weigh 4 tons. They're making sounds, low-frequency calls that travel through water and air simultaneously, that serve to maintain group cohesion, that allow for communication even when vegetation or distance obscures sight. One of them finds something interesting. Aquatic vegetation, perhaps, or the tender shoots of plants growing at the waterline. The head dips down, the distinctive duck-like bill scooping up a mouthful. The structure is perfectly adapted for this, sensitive, mobile, capable of selecting specific plants, rejecting others. The eyes, positioned high on the skull, maintain watch even while feeding. Multitasking, constant awareness. A juvenile plays, there's no other word for it, splashing, making small rushes through the water. Behavior that seems to serve no survival purpose, but which is clearly enjoyable, which might be practice for future escapes from predators, or which might be simply excess energy, youth expressing itself in motion. The adults tolerate it, watch it, but don't participate. Play is for the young. Adults have learned that energy is precious, that frivolity has costs. In the trees, magnolias and primitive oaks and conifers that are being slowly displaced by the flowering plants. Small dinosaurs are active. Dromaeosaurids, raptor family members, small enough that they specialize in hunting mammals and birds rather than attacking larger prey. They move through the branches with confidence, with precision, using their grasping hands to grip bark, their sickle claws held up to avoid damage, their long feathered tails providing balance. One of them has caught something, a mammal perhaps. Small, furry, dead now, being torn apart with those specialized teeth. The feeding is quick, efficient, practiced. This raptor has done this countless times. Will do it countless more times. Or would, if there were more times coming. Insects are everywhere. The buzz and hum of life in uncountable quantities. Dragonflies with wingspans as long as your forearm. Beetles of every description. Early ants. Not the sophisticated colonial species of your time, but primitive versions, still learning the strategies that will make them one of the most successful groups on Earth. Early bees visiting flowers, moths hidden in the shade waiting for night, flies of every type performing their essential ecological service of breaking down organic matter. The ecosystem is complete, balanced, every niche filled, producers and consumers and decomposers, all operating in the intricate web that makes life possible, that cycles nutrients, that maintains stability. This could be any spring morning in the past 10 million years. The species might vary, some go extinct, others evolve, new forms appear, but the basic structure remains, the pattern persists. Life continues its ancient rhythms without interruption, without awareness that the rhythms could ever stop. A Pachycephalosaurus appears at the clearing's edge. The dome-headed dinosaur, its skull roof thickened into a mass of bone that might be used for head-butting displays, or might serve some other purpose we can only guess at. This one is a juvenile, the dome not yet fully developed, still growing into the bizarre body plan that evolution has selected for its species. It moves cautiously into the open. These aren't particularly common animals. Fossils are rare, suggesting populations were never huge. But this one is here, is real, is living its life with the same intensity as every other creature. It browses on low vegetation, nips at fern fronds, samples flowering plants, making decisions about what to eat based on chemistry it can sense but we can't, based on nutritional needs that vary by season and age and reproductive status. The morning progresses, the sun climbs, the mist burns off. The temperature rises from comfortable to warm. Some animals seek shade. Others continue their activities. Feeding is a full-time occupation for large herbivores, requires most of waking hours, can't be interrupted just because of heat. A pterosaur glides overhead, large, perhaps 5-meter wingspan. Quetzalcoatlus or something similar, one of the largest flying animals ever to exist. It's not hunting in the traditional sense, not diving for prey like smaller pterosaurs might. Instead, it's soaring using thermals, using the rising warm air to gain altitude without expending energy, scanning the landscape for carrion, for easy meals, for opportunities. The shadow passes over the Triceratops, which flinches slightly, an instinctive response to anything above, to potential threat even though nothing flying is large enough to threaten an adult ceratopsian. Instincts don't know this. Instincts respond to patterns older than thought, older than analysis, older than reason. By midday, the activity level has decreased. It's hot now. Not dangerously so, but hot enough that exertion is uncomfortable, that shade is preferable to open sun. The Triceratops has found a spot beneath spreading branches. The Edmontosaurus group has moved into deeper water, partially submerged, cooling themselves, dozing with that half-sleep that prey animals master, never fully unconscious, always ready to react. The small raptors in the trees are resting too. One is preening, straightening feathers, maintaining the insulation and display structures that require constant care. Another is just sitting, eyes half closed, conserving energy for the evening hunt, when temperatures drop and prey becomes active again. This is real life, not the dramatic moments, not the kills, not the escapes, not the confrontations that will eventually be depicted in documentaries and movies. This is the long stretches between drama, the hours of simple existence, the maintenance of life that takes up most of time, that's boring and necessary and universal. A butterfly lands on a flower, not a butterfly exactly. The order Lepidoptera exists, but hasn't diversified into all the forms you'd recognize. But close enough. Winged insect. Proboscis extending to drink nectar. Wings patterned with colors that might be for camouflage or might be for warning, or might be for species recognition. Evolution has been working on butterflies and moths for over 100 million years by this point, perfecting forms that will barely change for the next 66 million. The butterfly doesn't know this is the last spring. Doesn't know that in a few hours its entire lineage will face a filter so severe that most won't survive. Doesn't know anything except the simple imperative to feed, to find mates, to reproduce. That's enough. That's all evolution requires. Live long enough to reproduce, pass on genes. Repeat. The afternoon brings clouds. Not storm clouds, just the normal convection of a humid subtropical climate. Moisture rising, condensing, forming the towering cumulus that might or might not produce rain. The light becomes diffuse, softer, more pleasant. The temperature drops slightly. Activity increases again as animals resume feeding, moving, living. The Triceratops has wandered further from the river, is browsing on low palmetto-like plants that are common in this ecosystem. The jaws work constantly, grinding, chewing, breaking down cellulose with the help of gut bacteria, extracting calories from plant matter that would be indigestible to most modern mammals. The eyes continue their scanning, the ears, small but present, rotate slightly, tracking sounds. Awareness maintained even during the mundane act of eating. Something spooks the Edmontosaurus herd. They burst from the water, running, and they're fast, surprisingly fast for animals this large. The reason becomes clear seconds later. A Tyrannosaurus emerges from the tree line. Not hunting, actually. Just walking, moving through its territory, checking sights, doing whatever tyrannosaurs do when they're not actively pursuing prey. But the hadrosaurs don't know this. Don't take chances. They run first, assess later. Better to waste energy on a false alarm than to linger and discover the threat is real. This is the calculus of survival. Err on the side of caution. Live to feed another day. The Tyrannosaurus watches them go without interest. Not hungry right now. Probably fed recently. There's a fullness to the body that suggests successful hunting or scavenging in the past day or two. It continues its patrol, moving with that horizontal posture we now know is correct, tail extended for balance, head swinging slightly with each step, scanning, scenting, existing in its moment. This could be any of the tyrannosaurs we've seen before, could be the same individuals, or their descendants, or their siblings. Doesn't matter. The species persists. Has persisted for the past 2 million years, will persist for, well, not much longer. But there's no way to know that. No warning signs. No prophecy. Just this moment, this afternoon, this normal day in the late Cretaceous. The sun is lowering, not setting yet, but moving in that direction. Evening approaching. The quality of light changing, becoming warmer, softer, more beautiful, in the way that late afternoon light always is, has always been, will always be, regardless of what era you're observing. Birds are becoming more vocal. The dawn chorus has an evening counterpart. Different species, different calls, but the same basic pattern of heightened activity at the transitions between day and night. Territory is being reinforced. Mates are being contacted. Young are being summoned back to nests. The daily rituals that have been performed for millions of years, that will be performed tomorrow, that will be... No, there won't be a tomorrow. Not like this. Not normal. Not recognizable. But they don't know. Can't know. The future is hidden. The present is all that exists. And the present is peaceful, is normal, is another day in a long, stable sequence of days that has continued without major interruption for millions of years. The Triceratops is returning to the river for evening water. The path worn by countless trips, by countless individuals over countless years. The routine is comforting in its way. Patterns that work are repeated, become habits, become the structure that makes life navigable, that reduces the cognitive load of constant decision-making. The pterosaur is returning too, gliding down from wherever it spent the afternoon riding thermals. It lands awkwardly. Pterosaurs aren't graceful on the ground, their wing membranes making walking difficult, their proportions optimized for flight rather than terrestrial locomotion. But it manages, folds those enormous wings, waddles to the water's edge for a drink. The small mammals are emerging. Nocturnal species mostly, waiting out the heat and the danger of daylight, venturing forth now in the relative safety of dusk. They're diverse, already diverse in the late Cretaceous, with multiple mammalian lineages experimenting with different strategies, different body plans, different niches. Most will die tomorrow, a few won't. Those few will inherit the world. But tonight, they're just small furry creatures, prey for the small raptors, incidental to the large dinosaurs, living in the margins, surviving through concealment and caution, waiting for their moment. And their moment is coming, is about to arrive, is literally hours away now, though none of them know it, though nothing in the environment suggests that this day is different from any other. The sky is clear, perfectly clear. The evening is calm, no storms on the horizon, no weather systems that might indicate disturbance. Just another beautiful late Cretaceous evening, with the sun painting the clouds in oranges and pinks, with the river reflecting the colors, with the whole landscape bathed in that particular light that makes everything look precious, fragile, worth preserving. The Triceratops drinks. The Tyrannosaurus settles into a resting spot, perhaps preparing to sleep, perhaps just resting before a night hunt. The Edmontosaurus herd has regrouped, is moving toward a grove of trees where they'll spend the night, semi-alert, ready to run if necessary, but also needing rest, needing sleep, needing to shut down non-essential systems for a few hours. The pterosaur takes off again. One last flight before darkness makes soaring impossible. It catches the final thermals, spirals upward, sees the landscape spread below in the fading light. If it could think abstractly, if it could appreciate beauty, it might consider this a perfect evening. But it doesn't. It just flies, just exists, just does what pterosaurs do, has done for millions of years, will do tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Tomorrow the skies will be full of fire. Tomorrow flight will be impossible, deadly, fatal for anything in the air. Tomorrow this pterosaur's entire lineage will end. But tonight it glides peacefully through air that's clean and clear and perfect for flight. The first stars are appearing. The same stars that have watched every moment we've witnessed. Polaris is not yet the North Star, the Earth's axis still pointing in a slightly different direction. The Milky Way stretches overhead in a band that's more prominent than in your time, brighter because there's no light pollution, no cities, no evidence of civilization because civilization doesn't exist yet, won't exist for another 65 million years. Under these stars, the Cretaceous world settles into night. Diurnal animals sleep. Nocturnal animals wake. The forest fills with sounds that are different from the day sounds. Owl-like calls from primitive birds. The rustling of mammals hunting insects. The splash of fish in the river, the creak and groan of trees responding to temperature changes. Everything is normal. Completely, utterly, unremarkably normal. The Triceratops sleeps, massive body at rest, but ears still listening, brain still processing sounds even in sleep, ready to wake if threat approaches. The Tyrannosaurus sleeps too, differently. Theropods sleep more lightly than large herbivores, must maintain more awareness, can't afford the luxury of deep unconsciousness. The mammals scurry through the underbrush. A small raptor catches one, quick strike, dispatch, feeding. The cycle continues, life consuming life. Energy transferring from one form to another. The pattern that has persisted for hundreds of millions of years, that seems eternal, that shows no signs of ending. But it is ending, right now. At this very moment, though no one here knows it. Because high above, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the clouds, beyond the blue glow that makes Earth beautiful from space, something is approaching. An asteroid, perhaps 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter, massing trillions of tons, traveling at cosmic speeds, perhaps 20 kilometers per second, perhaps more, silent, invisible, approaching from a direction that no one is watching, that no one could watch, that no one has the technology to detect even if they were looking. It's been traveling for perhaps millions of years, or billions, orbiting the sun in its own elliptical path, occasionally perturbed by gravitational interactions with planets, slowly, gradually, moving into an orbit that intersects Earth's. Chance, random, no malice, no purpose, just celestial mechanics playing out according to Newton's laws. And those laws say that when two bodies occupy the same space at the same time, a collision occurs. That when an asteroid traveling at 20 kilometers per second hits a planet, the kinetic energy released is unimaginable. The asteroid enters the atmosphere, high up, perhaps 100 kilometers. The air resistance is negligible at first. The atmosphere is thin there, but it's compressing the air in front of it, creating a shock wave, heating the gases to incandescence. Below, if anyone were awake and looking up at just the right moment, they might see it, a streak of light, brighter than any meteor. Brighter than the full moon, brighter than anything except the sun, moving so fast that the eye can barely track it, here and gone in seconds. But no one is looking. The nocturnal animals are focused on the ground, on hunting, on avoiding predators. The sleeping animals are unconscious. No one is watching the sky. No one sees the warning that wouldn't matter anyway because there's no time to react, no way to escape, no response that could possibly make a difference. The asteroid impacts. The location is what will one day be called the Yucatan Peninsula, a shallow sea, warm water overlying continental crust, the worst possible location in terms of global impact, because the shallow water will vaporize, will send enormous quantities of water vapor and sulfur from the underlying rock into the atmosphere, will create conditions that maximize atmospheric disruption. But that's academic, technical. What matters is simpler. The asteroid hits, and the world ends. Not immediately, not everywhere at once, but starting here, at the impact point and spreading outward at speeds that nothing can outrun, the late Cretaceous comes to a close. A flash of light is visible thousands of kilometers away, brighter than 1,000 suns, lighting up the night like midday. Animals wake, blinded, confused, unable to process what they're seeing because nothing in their evolutionary history has prepared them for this, because this is unprecedented, because this is the end. The shockwave is traveling faster than sound, will arrive before the sound of the impact, will shatter trees, will flatten forests, will kill anything in its path simply through overpressure, through the physical force of air moving faster than anything should move. And behind it, the heat, thermal radiation traveling at light speed, igniting forests, vaporizing water, setting fire to anything flammable within line of sight of the impact point. The Hell Creek Formation is perhaps 3,000 kilometers from the impact site, far enough that death isn't instant, far enough that there are minutes, maybe hours before the worst effects arrive, far enough that some animals might survive the initial catastrophe. But the sky is brightening, getting brighter. The stars are disappearing, not because dawn is coming. Dawn is still hours away. But because something else is illuminating the sky. Something wrong. Something that makes the night as bright as day, but with colours that are off, that are too white, too intense, too wrong. The Triceratops wakes, stands, confused. The Tyrannosaurus wakes too, looks up at the sky that shouldn't be bright, that shouldn't be this colour, that shouldn't be making the horizon glow like fire. The birds start calling, alarm calls, distress calls, every species at once creating a cacophony of fear and confusion. The mammals flee into burrows, into hollow logs, into any shelter they can find, driven by instinct to hide, to protect themselves from whatever threat is coming, even though they can't identify it, can't understand it, can't possibly prepare for it. And then the sound arrives, the sound of the impact, delayed by distance, travelling at the speed of sound, finally reaching the Hell Creek Formation. It's not really a sound. It's more like pressure, like the air itself is screaming, like reality is breaking. Every animal hears it, feels it, is overwhelmed by it. Ears rupture, balance systems fail. The world becomes chaos. And this is just the beginning. The shockwave is coming. The fires are coming. The acid rain is coming. The global winter is coming. The end is coming. But in this moment, this final moment before the shockwave arrives, before everything familiar is destroyed, the Cretaceous world still exists. The trees are still standing. The river is still flowing. The animals are still alive, still breathing, still existing in the world they've always known. The Triceratops looks up at the wrong sky. The Tyrannosaurus stands motionless, unable to process what its senses are reporting. The small mammals huddle in their burrows. The birds fall silent, stunned into speechlessness. And the shockwave arrives. Trees snap, not bend, snap. Massive trunks that have stood for centuries break like twigs. The forest becomes a horizontal rain of wood and leaves and debris travelling at supersonic speeds. Everything in its path dies. Everything. The Triceratops tries to run. Too slow, too massive, too vulnerable. The shockwave hits. The body tumbles, rolls, breaks apart. Death is instant. No pain, no awareness. Just existence ending. The Tyrannosaurus falls. The last of its kind, or one of the last, dying in a moment it can't comprehend, killed by forces it can't fight, ending an 8 million year dynasty in seconds. The Edmontosaurus herd scattered when the sound came. Some find temporary shelter in ravines. It won't matter. The fires are coming. The atmosphere is poisoned. The sun will disappear behind dust and sulfur aerosols. The world is going to freeze in darkness for years. But some mammals survive, in their burrows, protected by meters of earth. Small enough that their metabolic needs are low, omnivorous enough that they can eat whatever survives, adaptable enough to wait out the worst of it. Some birds survive, the small ones, the ones that can eat seeds, that can survive on detritus, that don't need specific foods or environments. They'll emerge into a shattered world. They'll slowly repopulate. They'll carry forward the dinosaur lineage into the new era. But the giants, the titans, the rulers of the Mesozoic, they're gone. In a day, they're gone. 165 million years of evolutionary success erased by chance, by an asteroid that happened to intersect Earth's orbit at just the wrong moment in cosmic history. The morning never comes, not the normal morning. What arrives instead is darkness and fire and ash and the beginning of years of winter, years of death, years of extinction that will take 75% of all species and will forever end the age of dinosaurs. But in the moment before it happened, in that final spring morning, that last peaceful day, everything was normal. Life continued. The sun rose. The animals fed and drank and rested and lived. They didn't know, couldn't know, had no warning. That's what makes it tragic, and beautiful, and terrible. The normalcy, the routine, the complete absence of awareness that this was the end, that tomorrow would never come, that everything they knew was about to cease existing. The last spring ended not with foreknowledge or drama or meaning. It ended on a Tuesday that wasn't a Tuesday, on a normal day that wasn't normal, On a morning that became evening, that became apocalypse with no transition, no warning, no time to prepare. The Cretaceous died not knowing it was dying, lived its final moments as if they were just moments. Just another day, just another rotation of a planet that had been rotating for billions of years and would continue rotating for billions more. But everything on the planet that would change was changing, was ending. And from the ashes, from the death, from the catastrophe, something new would emerge, something that would eventually, improbably, impossibly give rise to creatures capable of digging up the fossils, capable of reconstructing this story, capable of mourning for giants they never met who died in ways they can barely imagine. The asteroid impact is complete. The age of dinosaurs is over, and the age of mammals, our age, is about to begin. The asteroid strikes at approximately 11:47 a.m. local time, though time in this moment becomes meaningless. Second stretch. Physics operates at scales that biology wasn't designed to witness. What happens in the first second after impact will determine the fate of millions of species, will reshape the surface of the planet, will end one era and begin another. Let's slow it down. Let's watch frame by frame what happens when 10 trillion tons of rock traveling at 20 kilometers per second hits the Earth. Frame 1. Contact. The asteroid's leading edge touches the surface of the shallow sea. In the nanoseconds of first contact, the rock at the asteroid's surface experiences pressures and temperatures that exceed anything found naturally on Earth. The rock doesn't crumble. It doesn't splash. It vaporizes, converts instantly from solid to gas, expands, creates a pressure wave that propagates faster than sound. Frame 2. The asteroid continues downward. It's moving so fast that the Earth's surface might as well be liquid. The rock doesn't stop it, doesn't even slow it significantly. The asteroid punches through the crust like it's not there, kilometers of limestone and dolomite. The accumulated shells of countless marine organisms, compressed over millions of years, are penetrated in less than a second. The asteroid continues down, through sedimentary layers, through older rock toward the mantle itself. Frame 3. The ocean is gone, not displaced. Not pushed aside, vaporized. Billions of tons of water converted to superheated steam in an instant. The steam expands at hypersonic speeds, carrying with it the pulverized rock, the vaporized asteroid material, everything that was at ground zero. A fireball is forming, growing, already kilometers across and still expanding. Frame 4. The asteroid reaches its maximum depth, perhaps 15 kilometers into the crust. The kinetic energy, all of it, every joule, accumulated during millions of years of orbital travel, converts to heat and pressure and seismic energy. The explosion, if we can call it that, has the energy equivalent of 10 billion Hiroshima bombs, 100 million megatons, numbers that are meaningless because nothing in human experience provides reference points. Frame 5. Rebound. The crust, compressed beyond its physical limits, springs back. A mountain of molten rock erupts from the impact site. Not lava. This is rock that's been compressed and heated until it behaves like fluid, that's being ejected at supersonic speeds, that's fountaining kilometers into the atmosphere. The impact crater is forming, expanding. The rim is rising, collapsing, rising again as the physics of cratering play out on timescales measured in seconds. Frame 6. The ejector begins. Material from the impact site, vaporized asteroid, molten rock, superheated ocean water, is being thrown upward and outward. Some of this material is achieving escape velocity, will actually leave Earth's gravitational influence, will go into orbit around the Sun, or perhaps someday strike another planet, carrying with it the minerals and possibly the microscopic fossils of the late Cretaceous. Most of the ejector, however, will fall back, will rain down over the entire planet, will carry death to every continent. This is all happening in the first 10 seconds after impact. The shockwave is propagating outward at supersonic speeds. In the Gulf of Mexico, tsunamis are already forming. Not normal wave mechanics. The energy is too sudden, too massive. These are walls of water hundreds of meters high, traveling at the speed of jet aircraft, obliterating coastlines, penetrating hundreds of kilometers inland, drowning everything in their path. By 30 seconds after impact, North America is dying. The shockwave has reached the continent. Trees across Mexico and Central America are simply gone. not knocked down, not burned, but vaporized by the thermal pulse that travels ahead of the actual shock wave. The ground itself is on fire. Everything organic is combusting. The forests that have stood for millions of years are becoming ash. By 1 minute after impact, the seismic waves have circled the planet. Earthquakes of magnitude 11 or higher, magnitudes that don't exist on the Richter scale because nothing has ever been this powerful, are striking every tectonic plate simultaneously. Volcanoes are erupting, not just the active ones. Dormant systems are being awakened by the seismic energy, by the disruption to the crust, by stresses that exceed anything in geological history. The Hell Creek Formation, 3,000 kilometers from ground zero, experiences the shock wave approximately 12 minutes after impact. We watched this in the previous chapter, the forest snapping like kindling, the dinosaurs dying, the end arriving without warning or mercy. But let's look at what's happening globally, because this is not a local catastrophe, this is planetary. By 2 hours after impact, the thermal pulse has set fire to North and South America. The entire Western Hemisphere is burning, wildfires on a scale that defies description. Every forest, every grassland, everything that can burn is burning. The smoke is rising into the stratosphere, creating a cloud of ash and soot that will eventually encircle the globe. The tsunamis have reached their maximum extent. The Gulf Coast is underwater hundreds of kilometers inland. The Atlantic coast is similarly devastated. Islands in the Caribbean simply no longer exist, scoured clean by waves that would overtop mountains. The ejector is falling now. The material thrown into the upper atmosphere is coming back down, and it's coming down hot. Pieces of molten rock, some the size of pebbles, some the size of cars, entering the atmosphere at orbital velocities, heating to incandescence, radiating so much thermal energy that the atmosphere itself is heating up. The entire sky is glowing. The air temperature at ground level is rising rapidly. Animals that survived the initial shockwave are facing a new threat. The world is becoming an oven. The radiant heat from the returning ejector is igniting everything flammable. Forest animals have nowhere to hide. The trees themselves are catching fire from the thermal radiation. Some dig into the ground. Some flee to water. Most die. By 6 hours after impact, day has turned to night. Not normal night. The sun is still in the sky, but it's invisible behind the smoke and dust and aerosols. The amount of material thrown into the atmosphere is staggering. Billions of tons of dust. Sulfur from the vaporized rock forming sulfuric acid aerosols. The atmospheric chemistry is changing minute by minute, becoming toxic, becoming opaque. The temperature is dropping now, rapidly. The thermal pulse has passed. The fires are beginning to exhaust their fuel, and the dust and aerosols are blocking the sun. Photosynthesis is becoming impossible. The base of the food chain is being eliminated. By 24 hours after impact, the initial catastrophe is essentially complete. The immediate destruction, the shockwave, the thermal pulse, the tsunamis, has done its work. Perhaps 50% of all animal life on Earth has died in a single day. Not from old age, not from predation, not from disease, from an asteroid, from chance, from cosmic bad luck. But the extinction is just beginning. Because now comes the difficult part. The years of darkness, the nuclear winter, the slow starvation as ecosystems collapse. The dust will stay in the atmosphere for years. Some models suggest 5 years. Some suggest 10. The exact duration depends on particle size distribution, on atmospheric dynamics, on factors that are difficult to calculate, but the effect is clear. The sun is blocked. Temperatures plummet. Photosynthesis stops. Plants die. Herbivores die. Carnivores die. In the oceans, the situation is, if anything, worse. The tsunamis have mixed surface and deep water, disrupting currents, destroying coastal ecosystems. The lack of sunlight kills phytoplankton, the microscopic organisms that form the base of marine food webs. Ammonites, already stressed by other environmental changes, cannot cope. They go extinct completely. Marine reptiles, the ichthyosaurs, already gone by this point, but the plesiosaurs, the mosasaurs, they're losing their food sources. They're starving in oceans that are becoming dead zones. The large dinosaurs go first. They require too much food. A Tyrannosaurus needs tens of thousands of calories per day. and Edmontosaurus needs even more. When the plants die, the herbivores starve. When the herbivores die, the carnivores starve. Size becomes a liability. The larger you are, the faster you starve. The small mammals in their burrows are surviving. For now, they can live on seeds, on nuts, stored before the impact, on insects, on anything organic. Their metabolic needs are low. They can hibernate through the worst of it. They can wait. The small birds are surviving too. Seed eaters mainly, the ones that can subsist on detritus, the ones that don't need fresh vegetation. They're not thriving. Populations are crashing. But some are making it through, enough to preserve the lineage, enough to carry dinosaurs into the future. By 1 year after impact, the world is unrecognizable. The dust is still thick in the atmosphere. The temperature has dropped 20 degrees Celsius or more. In some regions it's snowing, actually snowing at tropical latitudes, ice forming at sea level, glaciers beginning to grow. The impact winter is in full effect. 90% of plant species have gone extinct. The forests are gone, replaced by dead trunks, by ash, by emptiness. The rivers still flow, but they carry silt and ash and the residue of the burnt world. The oceans are dark, dead. The coral reefs, which took millions of years to build, are dying. The complex ecosystems are collapsing into simple systems dominated by bacteria, by the most primitive forms of life. The large dinosaurs are gone now, all of them. Tyrannosaurus rex, the apex predator for 8 million years, is extinct. Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, Ankylosaurus, extinct. The sauropods, which have existed for 150 million years, which have been the dominant large herbivores for the entire Jurassic and Cretaceous, extinct. The pterosaurs, which have ruled the skies for 160 million years, extinct. By 2 years after impact, the dust is finally beginning to settle. Some sunlight is penetrating. The temperature is starting to stabilize, though it's still much colder than before. And now a new problem emerges: the greenhouse effect. The impact vaporized enormous quantities of rock that contained carbon. Carbon dioxide is flooding into the atmosphere, not immediately because the dust was blocking everything, but now that the dust is clearing, the CO2 is starting to have an effect. The climate is swinging from impact winter to greenhouse warming. The temperature is rising. Fast, too fast for ecosystems to adapt. By 5 years after impact, 75% of all species on Earth are extinct. This includes all non-avian dinosaurs, all pterosaurs, all large marine reptiles, most marine invertebrates, most large animals of any kind. The Cretaceous biota is gone, completely, replaced by a drastically simplified ecosystem dominated by survivors: small mammals, small birds, insects, ferns, algae. This is the KPG extinction event, the Cretaceous-Palagine boundary, one of the 5 largest mass extinctions in Earth's history, arguably the most sudden, definitely the most famous. But it's also a beginning, because from this devastation, from this near-total reset, new forms will emerge. The mammals, freed from competition with dinosaurs, will diversify explosively. Within 10 million years, they'll produce forms as large as the dinosaurs they replaced. Within 20 million years, they'll include our own ancestors, early primates beginning to experiment with grasping hands and binocular vision. The birds will diversify too, will fill every available niche, will evolve into 10,000 species, from hummingbirds to ostriches, continuing the dinosaur lineage, proving that extinction is never total, that life persists. The impact site itself, the Chicxulub crater, will slowly fill with sediment, will be buried, will become invisible from the surface. But it's there, preserved under the Yucatan Peninsula, a scar on the Earth's crust, physical evidence of the day the world ended, and in the rock layers all over the planet, there's a boundary. A thin line of clay that marks the end of the Cretaceous and the beginning of the Paleogene. This boundary layer contains iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids. Contains shocked quartz crystals that have been subjected to pressures that only occur in impacts or nuclear explosions. Contains spherules, tiny glass beads formed from rock that was vaporized and then condensed. Contains the physical evidence of catastrophe. Contains the proof that this happened, that the dinosaurs didn't decline slowly over millions of years but were erased suddenly, catastrophically by an event that they couldn't have predicted or survived. The boundary layer is thin, often just centimeters thick. But it represents the end of an era. Below it, dinosaurs, ammonites, marine reptiles, pterosaurs. Above it, mammals, birds, a new world struggling to be born from the ashes of the old. And sometimes, in certain locations where preservation is exceptional, you can see it even more clearly. Below the boundary, fossils of Cretaceous life, dinosaur bones, pollen from Cretaceous plants, the remains of a thriving ecosystem. Above the boundary, nothing, or almost nothing. A gap, a silence. Years where life was so diminished that almost nothing fossilized, where survival was so marginal that populations were too small to leave traces. The day the world ended is preserved in stone, readable, decipherable, a mystery that took 150 years to fully solve, from the first dinosaur fossils to the discovery of the Chicxulub crater to the final proof that an asteroid impact caused the extinction. But now we know. We've reconstructed it. We've modeled it. We've understood, as well as creatures who weren't there can understand, what happened on that day 66 million years ago when normalcy became apocalypse, when Tuesday became the end of time. The dinosaurs died. Not all of them. The birds survived. But the giants, the titans, the creatures that had dominated Earth for 165 million years, they died. Quickly. Completely. Leaving only bones. Only fossils. Only traces in stone of a world that can never exist again. Come back now. Return to your time. To the present. To the world of humans and cities and technology and all the complexity of modern life. But bring the dinosaurs with you, because they're not gone. Not entirely. They're here. In ways both literal and metaphorical. In ways both scientific and spiritual. The birds outside your window, they're dinosaurs. Literally. Genetically, they share the same basic body plan, bipedal stance, hollow bones, air sacs, the same fundamental architecture that made Tyrannosaurus rex the apex predator of the Cretaceous. When you see a crow, you're seeing a small theropod dinosaur. When you hear a robin sing, you're hearing the descendant of creatures that lived alongside Triceratops. This isn't metaphor. This is taxonomy. This is evolutionary continuity. Every chicken egg you've eaten came from a dinosaur. Every feather pillow you've slept on was filled with modified dinosaur scales. The 10,000 species of birds represent more dinosaur diversity than existed at any single moment in the Mesozoic. The dinosaurs aren't extinct. They evolved. They diversified. They're thriving. But the giants, the titans, the ones that captured our imagination, that made us feel small, that showed us what evolution could do given enough time, those are gone, preserved only in stone. Let's visit them. Let's see where they sleep now, in the layers of deep time. A fossil site. Let's say Montana, the Hell Creek Formation we've been visiting in the late Cretaceous. But now, today, modern Montana with its highways and towns and tourists, the landscape looks nothing like it did 66 million years ago. The river has moved. The forests are different, pine and juniper instead of magnolias and ferns. The climate is temperate instead of subtropical. Everything has changed, but the bones remain, buried in the rock. Waiting, a paleontologist, let's call her Doctor, Sarah Chen, is working a dig site. She's been here for 3 months. The summer field season in Montana, when the weather is good and the ground is dry and excavation is possible, she's found something significant. A partial Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton. Not complete. They rarely are, but substantial enough. A femur. Some ribs. Part of the skull including several teeth. Watch her work. It's painstaking. Meticulous. She's using brushes, dental picks, sometimes just her fingers, carefully removing the sandstone matrix that has entombed these bones for 66 million years. Each bone must be mapped, photographed, documented before removal. The position matters. The context matters. The fossils aren't just specimens. They're evidence. Data. The only direct window we have into the deep past. The bones are heavy. Mineralized. The original bone material is mostly gone, replaced molecule by minerals from groundwater, calcite, silica, iron oxides. The bones are now stone. stone shaped like bone. Stone that preserves the internal structure, the growth rings, sometimes even the cellular details if preservation was exceptional. Doctor? Chen lifts the femur. It takes 2 people. The fossil weighs over 100 kilograms. They've built a plaster jacket around it for protection, for transport. This bone will go to a museum. Will be studied, CT scanned, analysed for growth patterns, for pathologies, for any detail that might tell us more about how Tyrannosaurus lived, how it grew, how it died. Because this specific individual did die. 66 million years ago, this T. Rex fell. Maybe from disease, maybe from injury, maybe just from old age. 20 years is a long life for a large predator. It died and fell, and was buried quickly enough that scavengers didn't scatter the bones completely. Sedimentation covered it. Pressure compressed the sediment into rock, minerals infiltrated the bones, and time, vast amounts of time, passed. 66 million years, during which the continents moved, the climate changed, the Rockies rose, glaciers advanced and retreated multiple times. The asteroid impact site eroded and was buried. The crater rim collapsed, and through it all, these bones waited in the rock, patient, silent, preserving their testimony. Now they're being read. Dr. Chen can see evidence of healed injuries on the ribs. This T. Rex survived at least one major trauma, maybe a fight with a rival, maybe an accident during a hunt. The growth rings in the femur tell her this individual was about 17 years old at death, prime adult age. The tooth wear suggests it was feeding normally, not starving. So what killed it? We'll probably never know for certain. Death doesn't usually leave clear evidence unless it's catastrophic, but the bones tell a story anyway. They tell us what this animal was, how large, how old, how it lived, and collectively, when combined with hundreds of other specimens, thousands of other data points, they tell us about Tyrannosaurus rex as a species, its growth rates, its biomechanics, its behavior patterns. This is how we know about dinosaurs, not from complete skeletons, those are rare, not from perfect preservation, that's rarer still, but from fragments, from pieces, from the scattered evidence that erosion and geology and chance have exposed for us to find. Most dinosaurs left no fossils. Most individuals who died were completely consumed by scavengers, or eroded away, or destroyed by geological processes. Fossilization is rare, requires specific conditions, quick burial, anoxic environments that prevent complete decay, the right chemistry, the right pressure, the right amount of time. Most organisms never fossilize. They live, they die, they decompose, they leave no trace. This makes every fossil precious. Every bone is a miracle of preservation. Every discovery is a gift from deep time. Dr. Chen knows this, handles each fossil with reverence that's not religious, but is certainly spiritual in its way. These bones are time machines, tangible connections to a world that existed for longer than she can truly comprehend. She's holding the femur of an animal that actually lived, that actually walked, that actually hunted and fed and slept, and all the mundane activities that constitute existence. The connection is profound, humbling. She's touching the Cretaceous, literally reaching across 66 million years. But she also knows the limits, the frustrations, the things we'll never know. We'll never know what color most dinosaurs were. Some specimens preserve melanosomes, the structures that contain pigment, and we can make educated guesses based on their shape and distribution. But for most species, color is lost. Skin color, eye color, the patterns that were probably so important for communication and display, gone. We'll never hear their sounds. Vocal cords don't fossilize. We can make inferences from nasal structure, from skull shape, from the closest living relatives. But the actual sounds, the specific calls, the individual variations, lost forever. We'll never know their behaviors in detail. We can guess from trackways, from bone beds, from comparative anatomy. But the nuances of social interaction, of courtship displays, of parenting styles, of personality, these leave no fossils. They existed, were real, were important, but are now irretrievable. We'll never know how they felt. Didn't they feel something? Some form of experience, however alien to our own? Did they feel pain? Pleasure? Fear? Satisfaction? We'll never know, can know. Consciousness doesn't fossilize, and we'll certainly never see them. Never watch a living Tyrannosaurus hunt. Never feel the ground shake as Brachiosaurus walks past. Never look up and see pterosaurs soaring overhead. The experience of being in their presence, of existing in their world, that's lost, gone, as unreachable as any moment in the past. But we try, we reconstruct, we build skeletons in museums, mount them in dynamic poses that reflect our current understanding of biomechanics. We create models, life-sized and painted based on our best guesses about color and texture. We make documentaries, animations, movies, trying to bring these creatures back to life, to give modern humans some sense of what the Mesozoic was like. And people come, millions of people, children especially. There's something about dinosaurs that captures childhood imagination in ways few other things can. Perhaps it's the size. Perhaps it's the strangeness. Perhaps it's the knowledge that these were real, that they actually existed, that they're not fantasy but history. A child, let's say a 6-year-old boy, stands in a museum looking up at a Tyrannosaurus skeleton. It's mounted in a hunting pose, jaws open, tail extended for balance. It's huge, imposing, impressive. The child's eyes are wide. His mouth is open. He's feeling something. Or, maybe, wonder. A sense of how vast the world is, how much time has passed, how many things have existed that he'll never see. This is why we study dinosaurs. Not just for scientific reasons, though those are valid. Not just to understand evolution and extinction and the history of life, though those are important, but for this, for the connection to deep time, for the reminder that the world is older and stranger than our daily lives suggest, for the humbling recognition that we're brief, temporary, recent arrivals on a planet that has been producing wonders for billions of years. The dinosaurs teach us about impermanence. They ruled for 165 million years, far longer than mammals have dominated, far longer than primates have existed, incomparably longer than humans have been around. And yet they ended. Suddenly. Completely. Through no fault of their own, through no failure of adaptation, but through cosmic chance. An asteroid. Bad luck. This could happen again. Will happen again, eventually. Some asteroid currently in a stable orbit will be perturbed by gravitational interactions, will begin a new trajectory. And someday, maybe 1,000,000 years from now, maybe tomorrow, another impact will occur. Maybe as large as Chicxulub, maybe larger. We'd have warning, probably. Our technology can detect asteroids, can track their orbits, can predict collisions years in advance. We might even be able to deflect a threatening asteroid if we have enough time, but we might not. The universe doesn't owe us warning, doesn't guarantee survival. The dinosaurs got no warning. We might not either. This makes every moment precious. Every day normal and miraculous simultaneously. We exist on a planet that has been repeatedly devastated, repeatedly renewed, repeatedly transformed. We're temporary residents in a process that's been ongoing for 4 billion years and will continue for billions more. The fossils remind us of this. The bones in the rock are proof that everything ends. That dominance is temporary, that extinction is the fate of all species eventually. But they're also proof that life persists, that after catastrophe, recovery occurs. That evolution continues, that from endings come new beginnings. Dr. Chen finishes her fieldwork. The fossils are jacketed, crated, loaded onto trucks, transported to museums and universities. They'll be prepared, a process that can take years for large specimens. The rock matrix will be carefully removed, the bones will be stabilized, consolidated, sometimes cast in resin for protection. Then they'll be studied, measured, compared to other specimens, incorporated into the growing database of dinosaur knowledge. And eventually, some of them will go on display, will be mounted in museums where millions of people will see them, will inspire future paleontologists, will connect modern humans to the deep past, will serve as ambassadors from the Mesozoic, carrying messages from a world that ended 66 million years ago. The messages are simple. We existed. We were real. We mattered. Remember us. And we do. We remember. We study them, reconstruct them, try to understand them. We give them names, some scientific, some popular. We make them characters in stories. We use them to teach children about science and time and the vastness of history. The dinosaurs are gone, but they're not forgotten. They sleep in the stone, waiting to be found. And when we find them, when we excavate their bones and study their remains, we're not just doing science. We're performing a kind of resurrection. We're bringing the past back into the present. Not literally. We can't clone them, can't recreate them, can't make them live again. But we can know them, can understand them, can preserve their memory in our museums and our books and our minds. This is what paleontology is: a conversation with deep time, a dialogue with extinction, an attempt to recover what was lost and preserve it, however imperfectly, for the future. The sun is setting on this modern day. Dr. Joe could not have verged from me to die. Chen is packing up her tools, preparing to leave the field site. Tomorrow she'll return, we'll continue the excavation, we'll carefully, patiently recover more of the skeleton. It's tedious work, hot work, back-breaking work, but she wouldn't trade it for anything. Because this morning she touched the Cretaceous, held a bone that was part of a living Tyrannosaurus rex, connected across 66 million years, and tomorrow she'll do it again. The fossils are patient. They've waited this long. They can wait longer. They'll wait until every bone is recovered, every detail is documented, every secret they hold is extracted and studied and added to our collective knowledge, and then they'll rest in museums, protected, preserved, available to anyone who wants to see them, who wants to connect with the deep past, who wants to remember that once, long ago, giants walked this earth. The ground remembers, the stone records, and we, brief, temporary, recent humans, we honor the memory, we tell the stories, we keep the giants alive in the only way they can be kept alive, in knowledge, in wonder, in the recognition that they were here, that they mattered, that they're worth remembering. The dinosaurs are gone, but their story continues, in the fossils we find, in the birds we see, in the knowledge we accumulate, in the wonder we feel, in the connection to deep time that makes us realize how brief our moment is, how precious, how important to make it count while we're here, because someday, in the far future, something else might dig up our fossils, might study our remains, might wonder about us the way we wonder about dinosaurs, might ask, what were they like? How did they live? What did they care about? What ended them? And they'll find the traces, the bones, the artifacts, the cities turned to stone, and they'll try to understand us, to reconstruct us, to remember us, just as we remember the dinosaurs. The cycle continues, life and death, existence and extinction, memory and forgetting, but through it all, the stone remembers, the fossils preserve, and the story, however incomplete, survives. When giants walked, the earth was young and strange. Now the earth is older, still strange, and we walk where the giants once walked. Brief visitors in a story that's billions of years old and will continue long after we're gone. But we're here now. We can learn. We can remember. We can honor the past while living in the present and preparing for the future. The dinosaurs taught us this. Through their existence, through their extinction, through the bones they left behind. And we're grateful for the lesson, for the connection, for the reminder that we're part of something larger than ourselves, part of the great story of life on Earth, brief, temporary, precious, and worth remembering, always.